Believe now that we're live. So welcome to Ask Me Anything 3. It's been a while since I've been live. I did say that I would do a live when I got back, and the last week's been absolutely hectic. As usual, there are no sponsors on this video, but if you want to sponsor me, you want me to keep doing these, go over to www.sleight-of-mind.co.uk. That's SLEIGHT of mind.co.uk. And if you're in a pinch, you can go to www.peterturner.co.uk. There's a load of people in the chat, so we're going to be talking about a load of different things today. I'm going to touch upon some of the stuff I said in my last video that we talk about. And yeah, it's good to be back. It's absolutely amazing to be back. I just got back from the BAFTAs. I was nominated for a BAFTA, which is wild to say that. I've been nominated for a few different accolades over the years regarding television, but this one were a big one. Can everybody hear me? Is the sound all right? If somebody lets me know in the chat that everything's good, we'll continue. We'll talk about a few of the things that are on the subjects for today. That's it. Let's have a look at this. Let's have a little look up here. So, Moreau, how's it going, brother? I hadn't seen you for a while. I'm sorry we didn't get to touch base in Orlando. Things were absolutely crazy out there. So just to let everybody know, Moreau's one of the greatest mentalists in the world. Not only is he one of the greatest mentalists in the world, he's one of the greatest people in the world. He's tuning in all the way from Florida. Absolutely love Moreau to pieces. And I make you a promise that the next time I'm there, I'm going to make a beeline just to come to you. So if we don't get to cross paths, I'll definitely see you. But he has some stunning ideas, like really brilliant ideas. He's been a good friend of mine for many, many years. We're going down. Juan Pablo, Peter, have you any thoughts of doing a streaming service on everything you know, releasing one effect per month? So this were a thought that I had when I was working with Illusionists. So right through COVID, streaming really became a thing that got popular because we couldn't go out. And I always said that Mark Lemon and I were going to do a streaming service, and I never ended up doing it. And I don't regret not doing it because then the world opened back up. It had been great for the time, but I think now it's probably better just to do things the way that we're doing them. And I want to spend a lot more time and a lot more focus on YouTube and doing things on YouTube. And if you watch like episode 1 that I put out on YouTube, I have so much footage on hard drives that I could cut together a few entire specials. But behind the camera, I've got Sam. Sam's up here for a bit of time, and he's going to be working on filming new performance pieces and things for YouTube. So instead of having things to release, that's not really what I'm looking at the moment. What I want to do is I want to start a new YouTube channel. So there's going to be a new YouTube channel that goes up. It's going to have more life stuff on it. So me building cars, spray painting, falconry, racing motorbikes, driving around in my Lamborghini and other different things. And that's going to be over on that channel. And then on this channel, it'll be more dedicated to performance. It'll be more dedicated to things that are mentalism and hypnosis related, me talking about magic and products and things like that. I'm even going to start looking at books. I've got a load of old books and VHS tapes. In fact, I got my flight cases out, and I have all the original magazines from back like circa 1910 to 1940, you know. So I'm going to go through all those and talk about some things from there. But to answer your question, Juan Pablo, no, not really, but maybe in the future, who knows? Can everybody hear me? Is everything all right with the sound? Pigcake did say that he'd message me to let me know if the sound were bad. But let's have a look. Sounds good. There we go. So that's all right. So, Jonathan, I've been all right. You know, if you look at me, I'm actually shredding weight again. So after my mammoth trip around America, which I will talk about in a bit, I put a bit of weight on because it's really hard when you're on the road for like 5 weeks to eat healthy. And in America, it's almost impossible to eat healthy because every single place that you go, they're pumping everything with sugar and corn syrup and everything else. So even something as simple as just getting a flatbread and a bit of meat, it's got sugar in it. You look at the back of the warning label and the calories on a like a flatbread or a pita bread is just ridiculous. So I'm feeling good. I'm looking well. I'm starting to get back into shape. I'm going to lose probably another 13 pounds and then tone up a little bit. But that's, you know, it's a work in progress. I'm getting back in shape. So I'm feeling amazing. So thank you for asking. Luke. So Luke Jonas, I got your text message, but I was just setting up this live. I'd love to catch up. So Luke lives near me. He's a real great guy. He's got, you know, incredible mind, and he's released a few really great book tests, and he's the man to go to if you want to deal with book tests. But Luke, I'm going to text you back after this live, and then let's catch up. Let's go for dinner. Let's go for lunch. W Swim's about to listen on his drive. Are there any teases on the latest projects that you are working on? Do you know what? I'm so excited to be able to share with you what it is that Pigcake and I and now Sam and a few other people have been working on behind the scenes, but there's so many moving parts to this. It's not just one dedicated area of mentalism. There's lots to it, and I'm trying not to tip what it is, but I do know it's going to ruffle a few feathers. It's going to ruffle a few feathers with a few companies, and I'm hoping that they just take it as this on my own. I did an RV trip from the west coast to the east coast in America, and I designed something that I'm really proud of, and it's taking a glimpse behind the scenes of a world that I've always dipped my toe in but never quite fully immersed myself into. And that's probably the best way to put it. But what I'm doing is looking at an area of mentalism that's little talked about and little commercial. And when I did How to Control Minds, I remember getting a message from Justin Trance, which blew me away, because Justin's one of the greatest hypnotists on the entire planet. And Justin said to me, "You've managed to do what all of us hypnotists have failed to do for so many years, and that's create a package of hypnotic style effects that's commercial." And that always stuck with me, and I thought, you know what, there's so many different areas of mentalism that I'm interested in. It's time to start ticking off those boxes and designing things in sort of those areas. So that's all I can say, really. But it's a really amazing looking project. I don't want to be as egotistical to say that it's a really great project. I'm proud of what's on there. I think it's going to be good. I don't want to say that it's going to be the most amazing thing ever, but it's a really good project. The ideas on there are novel but practical. So many real world performances. It's been broken down in so many different ways, and I've got access to, shops and things like that. And that's all I can say to do the explanations. But there's I'd say about another 2 or 3 months work that's going to be involved in getting it out there, but it will drop before that. So it's going to be one of these things that maybe we Kickstarter, who knows? I'm not sure how we're going to do that. So all that's got to be designed. At this moment in time, I'm backwards and forwards with a company that's far away from here that are going to be dealing with the building of what this thing is and the different aspects and elements of it. But yeah, I know I'm sort of dancing around it, but I can't wait for it. I can't wait for it to drop, because it's going to be, in my opinion, a game changer in terms of the footage, the way this is produced, and how in depth it is. There's nothing like this out there. When is Pigcake coming back for another boys trip? So he's saying never, never again. What he doesn't realise that in the next 20 days, I'll guarantee to everybody watching this live that he'll be packing his little self onto a plane, and he'll be flying over here to come sleep on the floor, because he's been demoted from the bed down to the chair, and he's been demoted from the chair now down to the floor because of his behaviour. And he'll know exactly what I mean by that. We've been waiting for him to contact a company for the last 6 weeks, and he's only just got round to it today. So because of that Pigcake, now he can sleep on the rug on the floor. And I am kidding. I don't treat him like that. I'm only joking. But yeah. So Harry Smith, hi Pete, big fan of your work. Can you please talk a bit about what you did on your masterclass with Vanishing Ink? So that were a really interesting. It were a really interesting talk with that, because the way that unfolded were really weird. And I went over to Columbus, Ohio, and I only had 40 sets of lecture notes printed. And the idea was that I was going to be doing this little small performance to about 40 to 80 people, which is a breeze, you know what I mean? It's like just walking into a pub and doing this little performance, and that's what I thought it'd be. And then I realized that it started to grow, and it started to grow, and it started to grow. And then I walked into the hall that they wanted me to give this talk and this performance in, and there were like 1,500 seats. Now, I'm not saying that that's massive, but going from believing that you're only doing a small talk to like 40 to 80 people, and preparing for that small talk, and then walking into a room with like 1,500 seats, and I filled them. It were at capacity on a Thursday night, and it were absolutely wild. And it literally took me an hour to get from the stage back into the room where everybody were congregating, just because I got stopped so many times. It was so nice. It were like really great to take photographs and meet people, and I sat around, and it was one of the best conventions that I'd ever been to. I'm going to be taking my time to go to more conventions, so if there's anybody about, please feel free to stop me. I'd love to sit and jam with you. But what I talked about in that, I think I did like an ESP matchup thing that was really nice. And at the time, I really kicked myself, because I'm usually pretty good at crediting, and I forgot Dave Humphreys. And Dave Humphreys, I hope he doesn't, he doesn't think that I'm bad because I forgot that. Normally I'd be really great, but I would jet lag to hell. So Dave Humphreys and Carver Carver and Elliott, which is like an effect from 1928. I did an update on that and a version, and you know, that effect's such an interesting effect that even people like Darren use that effect. It's like a really great effect. Brilliant principle, and I have my own spin on it and my own take on the way that I deal with it. I think I talked about Sweet Force of Mine. I might be wrong. I talked about some number things. I talked about any card at any number. It was like a mixed bag of things that I talked about. There were a really nice, interesting thing that used a friction pen. They were almost like a Spy Gadget peak thing that I thought were interesting, that I've not released anywhere else. I maybe talked about it subsequently, but not at that point. There were a lot on there, yeah. It were a really interesting event, and I'd love to go back and do something with Vanishing Ink. Vanishing Ink and I, we connected and we were supposed to do something together. And then, unfortunately, Vanishing Ink's warehouse burnt to the ground. And I know that they spent a lot of time at that point dealing with that. And then, you know, I'm not going to get into the business aspects of stuff, but whenever something like that's going on, they've got to put their priorities there. And I never imposed, so I never chased it back up. But maybe going down the line, I'm a free agent. I can do whatever I want. I know I've got some work coming up in the future with Murphy's, but that's just something that I promised them. And then I'd love to go back and do some stuff with Illusionist. Now, I were in talks with Illusionist about a month ago, maybe before that, and there were preliminary talks. You know, there were nothing set in stone, but I'm good friends with everybody over there. The only gripe or common concern that I had when it come to that company is that I did things a little bit there, and I wish I hadn't have done that. I wish I'd have put my foot down a little bit more. And you know, I can be a bit when I'm working in those capacities, I'm really passionate about what I do, so I hate it when there's any compromise if it's got my name on it. And I found a few times I compromised in that situation, and then later down the line, reading the forums, the things that I compromised on were the things that people complained about. And that were really the main gripe or the fallout that I had with Illusionists. So, you know, I'd love to go back with them. I'd love to go back, and I'd love to spend some time working with them, because actually, you know, to give Geraint and the boys their credit, they're one of the only companies that have never messed me about, ever. When it came to actually paying on time, when it came to delivering on their promises of what they'd provide me, they always over-delivered in that regard. So, you know, I have nothing but good things to say to them in terms of the monetary side of stuff, but the creativity side of stuff, if I had a little bit more free reign, I think that we'd get on like a house on fire. So that answers your question. Let's have a look at this. Hey Bobo, how's it going? It's been a while since we've caught up. We're still yet to meet up. Let's talk when you're free. Let's just jump on a plane and go fly out to Spain and do something. Look, we're young, we're free, we can go wherever we want in the world, so let's just go and do it. Have you done a Chinese zodiac anagram like astrological? So I got into a conversation recently where somebody was wanting to take everything that I'd done and they wanted to translate it into Chinese. Now, I've got a couple of my books translated into Chinese. I've got a couple of my published works that are translated into Chinese, but the reason that we didn't come to an agreement is that the book were retailing the rest of the world at 100 GBP, and they wanted to sell the book at $45 and then pay me 8% profit. And when you look at the numbers there, they're already undercutting the rest of the world by over 50%. And then not only by 50%, they were making a product that were a limited run product, like unlimited, and then they only wanted to pay me 8% of the profit. And I'm like, well, wait a minute here. I've already done the work. I've already paid for this publishing. I've already paid for somebody to proofread this. I've already paid for somebody to edit this. I've already got all the contributions in and done all the work. And all you're doing is translating it and then running it to a printer's, and you want to take 92% of the profit. And it didn't work for me. So the answer to that question is no. Like, I don't think a lot of people realize what the business is like, the back end of the business, because it's never pro artist, really. It's always pro company. And I do want to do a few videos on what it's like to publish a product and publish your first product and things, because when I published my very first book, you know, that sent me into the stratosphere in terms of people knowing who I was, and it really helped me in terms of promotion. But I never made a penny off that. And like my first DVD set that I ever made, I got paid £300 for my first DVD set, and they told me they were going to retail it at £40. And then all of a sudden they realized how popular like my content was at the time. And again, I'm not blowing my own trumpet saying that. These are their words, not mine. And they changed the price from £40 to £160 a copy. And then I had to pay for my own train and my own accommodation. So by the time I'd done that, I had no money. I didn't get paid for it, you know. So there's a lot of times where companies have promised to pay me things and then they never pay me. There were times when I full on sent them things and they uploaded things illegally for months and months and months at a time. They had 13 products of mine, and I'm not going to say what the products are or the company is, but they had 13 products of mine that they'd uploaded. They made money for 13 months and then told me that they were never going to pay me, you know. But they didn't even ask me to upload them. Somebody else uploaded them and were taking money for them, and they refused to take them down because it wasn't me that uploaded them. Even though my name were on the front of the product, even though I'd written them, even though they'd illegally downloaded them and uploaded them to this company, they refused to take them down because I wasn't the one that uploaded them. And these are the sorts of things that you deal with as an artist. And what happens is you end up cutting yourself off from these companies and you end up working for yourself and doing a lot for yourself. And I think it was the best move that I ever made, because at the time I was consulting, I think I was consulting in Paris, and I consulted for a good friend of mine over there who I won't name, but we were working on some comedy television shows at the time. We also worked on a couple of pilots. And one of the cinematographers over there were treating me like a piece of dirt. So what I did is I thought, well, wait a minute here, I'm consulting and this edit needs to work in a certain way. And I'm not going to give anything away saying that, but it's a technique called freeze boxing. And directorially, it's a really interesting piece because you've got to arrive at what the edit is inside your head. But cinematographers don't want to work or do what you're telling them to do because you're not the director. So you're just a consultant that's on this set. There's this team of people. But the director needs to work alongside you because the edit needs to work that way around. And it was around about that time that I said, you know what? If I learn to use a camera myself, if I learn to direct, if I learn to do all this stuff, it'll not only help my consulting work, it'll enable me to be able to use the jargon or the language of people that use cameras. And then they have to listen to me because I can tell them the technical terms for things. But it'll also help me when it comes to designing and filming my own products and my own releases. So I started a production company, and that production company were called 13 Souls. I mean, I had a company before that, but 13 Souls were the first prominent one. And then it leads to now, and yeah, I don't have those issues anymore, and that's it. So it's a lot easier for me now to walk into any company or record anything because I just do it myself. And if they don't want it, or because they don't want to take on the work of producing it or the percentage that they want to give me, I'll do it myself, right? But we'll do a big video, I promise, on the behind the scenes of what it's like to work for companies, you know, the do's and don'ts, the pitfalls of working with specific companies. And you know, like I said, none of them I don't think are out to get you, but there's certain things that you have to know when it comes to that. So if you're looking at writing a book yourself, if you're looking at sharing your own material, if you're looking at doing any of that stuff, then that's what these companies do. Just on the note of that, one little thing I will say is I've just signed a new artist. A guy called Aaron. He's releasing a book called Destiny, and it's a really beautiful principle. I'm not going to say what it is, but he sent it to me. I fell in love with it. I said, look, I've got about 1,000 ideas. I could take 5 of those and put them, you know, put my name to yours. We can edit it. So I'm giving him his first shot like Kent and Nepper gave me. And so it almost feels like I'm giving back in a way. But yeah. Have I ever been to a safari park? Do you know what? What's interesting is I had actually... we're going to go to a safari park. We're going to go to one. So just to do some filming and just hang out at one. I've never been to a safari park at all. Sebastian Farr, how's it going, bro? When you coming back up here? So I hung out with Sebastian a couple of weeks back. Really great, like perfect. Come back up. Let's have a look at this. Magic Allen. Hey, Pete, I heard you change your number. Tried to reach out on Insta. Would love to reach out regarding something for our magic community since we talked in BMC. What's the best way to reach out? I'll send you a message on Instagram. So there's a reason why I changed. So I'm in the process of changing my number, but half the messages are not coming through because they've not quite linked properly on the iCloud. And I'm in the process of changing my email. The email will be the thing that everybody will be able to get hold of. The reason why I'm changing it is because somebody's got access to one of my accounts, and that's due to the fact that they stole something of mine, like an iPad or an old phone or a computer or whatever, but they were actually using my bank card, sending themselves an OTP. So what they were doing is sending the one-time password whilst I were asleep, and then getting that one-time password and then using it to book things and to do things with. I'm not going to, again, name any names. Yeah, I'm not going to name any names, but they were doing that. So I think they might be logged into my iCloud. And if I change it, it's sending all the passwords and everything to there. So that's the reason for changing it. It's not because I'm trying to avoid anybody or anything. But yeah, just to point out as well, somebody did send me a text message to ask if the products purchased last week went out. Everything went out today. So it's been a bank holiday in England. So that means that Friday, even if you take them down Friday, they're not posted Saturday, they're not posted Sunday, they're not posted Monday, they're posted Tuesday. So I just thought, you know what? I'll bite the bullet. I'll wait till Tuesday and I'll post them out. And Sam and I went out and we posted everything that needed posting today. So that's that. Let's have a look at this. So I will get in contact with you, Alan. Is there any upcoming projects of yours? Yes, there is. I was just talking about one a minute ago. I'll talk about that more in the next couple of videos. I will drop some teasers of things in there. Just at this moment in time, I don't really want to say what it is that I'm doing because I think that people are going to lose themselves that much over it that some people will try to sabotage it. So I don't want to say that. And there's an expression that Pigcake and I use, and it's cover your candle. And that just means to keep the flame burning, you've got to hide it from the elements. And that comes from Babs Solomon. But yeah, so we're working on something. Manel, is it true you had to drink pee because you didn't have water halfway through the RV trip? No, do you know what? I'd rather have died in a desert. That's Pigcake that does stuff like that. Yeah, he's a gross little man. It's Pigcake that does things like that. But now the truth is that we were actually pretty good. So when we went on the road trip, so I want to also on my other channel do the do's and don'ts of road tripping in an RV. And people don't realize how expensive it is, right? The fuel were a beautiful thing. In England, I fill the RV up in England, it'd be £250 a time. Over there, we were filling it up for $60 to $70. I were like falling through the floor with how cheap it was to travel in an RV in the States. But the rental of the RV were like $5,500. And now another thing that I forgot to tell Pigcake about is when we pass through like the tolls, which are like $1 toll or $2 toll, they're now charging me $30 for every single toll that I got because it's an administration fee. So all these tolls are adding up and that's costing me. And it were like $5,500 for like just the RV. And then the RV that they give us, you would not believe what it were like. It were ridiculous. The exhaust came off the bottom of it. So we had to go to like an O'Reilly's. And I think I've got footage of this, but I'm literally underneath an O'Reilly's with a spanner that I borrowed, like fixing an exhaust. And then there were nowhere to park when we got to St. Augustine. So we like broke onto this like, I don't even know what it was. It was like imagine a theme park, but where everybody parks their cars. And you have to drive in this entrance. And around this entrance, there was just like a little curb. And I said to Pigcake, I said, I wonder if we can get into there. So we literally ramped this RV onto this little curb and we parked in so nobody saw us parking in there. And as we did it, the funnel for the cooker snapped off. So I had to get underneath and fix that. And we were constantly repairing things. I think at one point during the trip, I got stuck on like a quicksand sand. It's called a soft shoulder. So we pulled over in the middle of the desert in Arizona. And the wheels started spinning, and the more they spun, it dug in and dug in and dug in and dug in. And we got all this footage of this RV just digging itself into the ground in the quicksand slowly. And we had to get like a truck to come out and pull us out. It were a great trip. Like for everything that could be said that's wrong about it, it were an amazing experience for me to be able to go from the West Coast to the East Coast. I mean, if you'd have said to me when I were 10 years old, 12 years old, bearing in mind when I worked as a pitchman on the stall at Peace Hall, I didn't know that anything outside of Queensbury and Halifax and Bradford existed. Just those three towns were about as big as the scope of the world was for me. And you know, yeah, you talk about geography and other things, but you don't realize that these places are actually a lot closer than you believe that they are. And I've never been able to afford it. And I read this book by Andrew Mayne and I opened it. And I think I talked about this on the Dice Man, but I remember reading that copyright notice and just sitting there and getting like goosebumps because I read about the fact that this book had come from America, and I'd never realized that something could come from America. So if you'd have told me, even up until 20 years old, I'm in a one-bedroom flat, and this one-bedroom flat, we were upstairs, and we couldn't afford electricity. So I used to take the extension cord from downstairs, and they'd let me run it up into the house, and I were working like 2 or 3 jobs at the time. And it were either spend the £8. We had these knock-a-door loans that had come and they take that much money. And then by the time bills had gone out, that I either had to pay for gas and electricity or I had to pay for food or gas and electricity. and most of the time, because there were two of us, it were food. So paid for that. And me and my partner at the time, like, this is going back some time, but we couldn't even afford electricity. And to know that as soon as everything's changed, that little trip, to be able to not even have to think about it and like go and be able to fly to America, deal with business in America. Like, people want to do business in America. I'm doing paperwork. And then to be able to fly somebody in from one side of America to the other, and then rent an RV, and know that in England you can't do that. Just get a 30-foot RV and then deck it out with like snacks and other things, and just go like, that's where I want to go, 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 and pack a drone in there and fly a drone around and take cameras. And when we were stopping, you know, we just stop at like we'd stop in a Walmart or a car park. These car parks were great because you could just literally stay there for the night. We only slept for like 4 or 5 hours, if that, you know what I mean? It were in the desert, it were freezing cold at night, but we get up, we just go get water and everything else. And then every so often, you know, we'd stop off. We were quite lucky to, when we went into New Orleans, to go to Joshua Quinn's. We could shower there. We had a shower in the RV that like didn't last very long, but we managed that. The water pressure were terrible. And then to be able to go to RV parks, and yeah, it was just great. Like, all in it were an expensive trip, but it were life changing, you know. And that's the thing. And that's when everybody says silly things like, oh, you know, yeah, but you know, when you've got responsibilities. No, we all have responsibilities, but sometimes you've just got to take those chances. So for Pigcake, I think he'd probably say it was one of the worst things that he ever did in his life, but I don't think he really understood how important it was for me. Like, I have this really weird sentimental thing about me, and it's like, I don't really care. I'm not materialistic. I'm from a ghetto. I'm from a council estate. I don't really care about things. I don't care about money. That don't mean that I squander it. It don't mean that I waste it. It don't mean that I've got so much of it that I never need to do anything again. But it's like, this house here has got like 2 vices. And I remember when I was younger, I like vices, like wood turning and a metal turning vice. My dad said, you know, one day if you're ever successful, you might be able to get a place that's got 2. And my dad always dreamed of having a place that had 2 vices. So when I came to look at this house, I didn't even look in the house. I just decided this is the place for me as soon as I saw those 2 vices. And that's the same as all the other little things that I've got in my life. You know, like recently, a few people might have seen on Instagram, I purchased a white Lamborghini. And to be able to sit and say that I own a Lamborghini, it's like 10 years ago, I didn't have a pot to piss in. And now 10 years later, I didn't get the Lamborghini because it were, oh, look at me, I've got a Lamborghini. When I was 12 years old, I was at school at World Book Day. What a lot of people don't know about me, and I will go into this on my normal channel. When I was a kid, I was locked under the stairs sometimes, right? I was literally locked under the stairs. If I misbehaved, I was locked into a room. One year, I was locked into a room for the 6-week holidays. We have 6 weeks in England. I was locked into a blacked out room for 6 weeks, and we were fed on soup. And that's not a lie. That's not an exaggeration. And the only thing that I had were a little flashlight and books. And when I was a kid, I just loved reading. Like, more than anything else, I loved reading. And I got to World Book Day, and we could never afford the books at World Book Day. And I remember one year I saw this book of supercars, and there were a free poster inside it, and I opened it, and it were a white Lamborghini. And I said to my friend Tom at the time, I said, I'm going to have one of these when I'm older. And he looked at me and said, you're an idiot. And like, I folded the book up, put it back on the shelf, and I stole the poster. And I used to put this poster up, and I used to just visualize having one of these. And that's it. It's not about what it is, but it's about ticking off that little expression that I made when I was 12 years old. Like, things that seemed so impossible, but this has opened up a world to me that I never thought were possible. You know, walking on a red carpet with like celebrities and people that are in the television industry, and I'd never wore a tuxedo before last week. Do you know what I mean? So all of this stuff is like new ground for me. Being able to work on television shows, I've been very lucky over the last 10 years to work on a lot of different shows, from talent shows to movies to Netflix stuff to stuff you won't believe. Like, just today I got a call out of the blue today to work on the adverts for like a whole chain of pubs for like a poker thing. And that's not like even in the scope of what it is that I do. Being able to work on the Super Bowl and getting an open access pass to all areas behind the scenes, and going into all the live boxes and right up to the pitch and onto the pitch if I wanted during the halftime show, and access to all the players. Like, none of that stuff would have seemed worldly possible. So I don't think Pigcake really understands how important that trip was to me, because he can just fly to New Orleans whenever he wants for like $150, you know, or £200 or whatever, $200, for me, it were just something that inside my soul, I knew I needed to do it. And that's really what I want to share with you guys. I documented it and I want to share that stuff. And that's really what I want to capture. And that's what my new channel's going to be about. It's going to be about like behind the scenes of all the things that you don't get to see. Like, I love Hanneman to pieces, but we don't really know much about Hanneman other than the fact that, you know, he hurt himself to the point that he doesn't exist anymore. And I have to be careful what I say because it's YouTube. But and we don't really know much about Darren's private life. We don't really know much about Bob Cassidy. We know a little bit about what we read in books, but we never really had open access to see behind the scenes. And Sam, one thing that Sam were blown away by when he come is that I've got over 10 years of my life. In fact, more than that, I have old video cameras documenting my life and filming all of these things that I've never shared and I've never talked about. I've got terabytes upon terabytes of footage of like incredible things that I've done. Like, I went to dinner with Dave Chappelle, you know, like, and I'm sat this close to Dave Chappelle talking about his comedy act and saying, have you ever thought about this? And we're jamming backwards and forwards and, you know, being able to hang around, go to Tony Hawk's skate park and just even messing about on a skateboard with Tony Hawk, you know what I mean? It's like, and over the years, I've done so many different things like that I've never really talked about them. So I think these experiences are going to be good for my other channel. But yeah, anyway, I'm going off on a tangent, but that's that. Let's have a look. But no, we didn't have to drink pee. Pigcake probably did because he's a sadist. I really thought the Open Predictions project would be like a confabulation of something other than cards, but the project is all right. So Hung Vu, well, that project's not mine. That project's Pigcake's. My ethos is this: is that whenever you've got anything, never ever stop yourself from learning something that's playing card related. Go back, read Card College. Look at people like Juan Tamariz or Danny de Ortiz and people like Darwin Ortiz. Just look at people like that. Look at what they're doing. Watch what they're doing, and really think about what you can do with it. It doesn't have to be what you see. If you look at that, the David Berglass video that I shot, and if you've not seen it, it's on my channel. If you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe to it. Hit the bell notification. But go have a look at that video. I perform a version of any card at any number or the Berglass effect, and I talk about the fact that it didn't ever feel like it truly belonged to me because I didn't create it. And then you see what I turn it into. These things are meant to be used as guidelines. And the idea when we release anything is to give you things that you can go out and do, but they should be the starting point for what you do. So you see, like an open prediction, there's nothing stopping you making more of these open predictions. There's nothing stopping you using cards. There's nothing stopping you using billets. There's nothing stopping you using tarot cards and so on and so forth. You know, it's just you've got to experiment. Pick something apart. Look at the problems that you find in a routine. Not every routine is going to be perfect for you. You're a problem solver. You're not a magician. You're not a mentalist. You're not a mind reader. You're not a psychic. You're not a hypnotist. You're a problem solver. So find the problems and then fix them, and your brain will start doing that very quickly. But there's not a one-size-fits-all solution. And that's the thing you've got to remember. When we're releasing a project, or when Pigcake's releasing a project, he's doing it from his perspective. It's his artistry and how he wants to release it. And so when he says to me, this is what I want, I just give him what I've got on the subject. And that's it. It doesn't mean that it's going to fit you. It's not one size that fits all. But what you got to do is look at that and think, how would I do this? What can I take from that? What sentence did I really love in this? You know, whether it's talking about deja vu. Deja vu is the idea that you've lived something before and you're reliving it. But this is not deja vu. This is vujade, in the sense that I'm preempting it before it ever happens. That one little line's a tiny line that you can sprinkle over other things. So what we've really got to start learning to do as a community is we've got to start learning to take the tiny things from things, extrapolate the sentences that we like. If we love a plot, take it. If we love a method, take it and put them together. We should design amalgamations of things that we love, right? So hopefully that answers your question, but it really doesn't matter that it's just about cards, because it's only about cards in the way that it's being presented. That doesn't mean that it's only about cards, right? And that's a really interesting thing to think about. So Pratik, hope you're doing well. I wanted to ask you, if you're using a Peak wallet, what justifications you give for a spectator to write things on a card and put the business card in the wallet. It's a great question. So one of the greatest justifications I've always found with a Peak wallet is to talk about skepticism and to openly find somebody that's a skeptic. Now, the reason that that's a beautiful thing, there's a few ways to justify people writing things down. Some people say you don't need a justification. I think that if there's no justification for every single thing that you're doing, what you're doing is leaving holes in the things that you're doing for people to pick at, little bits of thread for them to pull at. Now, a little bit of thread can be a good thing. And Darren was a master at understanding about those little bits of thread, because what Darren would do is he'd leave you bits of thread and breadcrumbs to things that led nowhere. So that's important to remember. These little bits of thread are good. But when you're leaving holes in things and not leaving logical justifications for other things, you're also leaving breadcrumbs that actually lead to what it is that you're doing. And if somebody suspects whether it's a method or not, a viable method that would work, then it doesn't matter whether that's the method you're using or not. If somebody thinks that you looked at something and they believe that, it makes no difference whether you did or you didn't. That's the explanation. The explanation is not that you're reading minds. So to answer your question, there's a few good ways. One of them is somebody who's forgetful, somebody who's not got a good memory. Well, write this down just in case you forget it. You know, another one is that write this down because you're a skeptic. You've told us that you have an air of skepticism, and therefore, I think all of us know that even if I got this right, you wouldn't admit it. So the first thing is logically justifying the reason for them writing this down. So they do that. And then you say to them, I'm going to bet you the content of this wallet that I can guess where it is that you're thinking of. And you open it up and you show a £20 note or a $20 bill or whatever it is that you want to put inside there. And you say, let's keep these together. So I can't take the money out when you're not looking, because I did use the words, I'll give you whatever's inside here. So you can't change that piece of card, push it into there, and I'll tell you what, you hold on to it. So that means now your thought's there, my money's there. If I manage to guess it, then, you know, I'm right and you don't have to be a skeptic anymore. If I don't guess it, the £20 there. So now you've made it about that. The logical framework is that both of those articles and items exist in the same place at the same time. Somebody else is holding on to it, which obviously gives you your logical motivation to do what it is that you need to do. That gets placed off to the side. And now psychologically, the only thread that's there to pick at is the pseudo sprinkles that you sprinkle over the top of the stuff during the presentation of the performance. So I know that's a very quick answer, but I hope that helps. Let's have a look at this. Milli Vanilli Magic. Is it? Yeah, Milli Vanilli. Hey Pete, I'm just preparing my first mentalism show. Any idea of how to start a show? Big hi from Serbia. So what a lot of people don't know, and this is the bit that really makes me laugh, is that if you go on the forums, there's this debate whether I actually know about what I'm talking about when it comes to live shows. Well, I mean, Sam will attest to this. Sam's been here for one day, and yesterday I spent a full day writing a live show that's going to go out to 48,000 people, right? It's going to be a lot of people, and it's going to, and you know, good chance it's going to be televised at the end. I can't say much more than that. But just before that, just before I went away on my trip, I did a show and we had 12,000 people in one night that came, and this were a big show for an event that reached over more than just magic and mentalism. So I'm constantly choreographing and directing and working on things. I actually worked on that with Tom Elsden, he'll kill me for that, Tom Elderfield, and a few other people. But Tom, again, is a real genius with this stuff. So when it comes to building these shows, there's formulas that you can use. And the formulas that you use often dictate the way that something's going to run or something's going to play. Now, the first question you've got to ask yourself is, do people know who you are? That's one of the most important questions, because whenever I'm designing these shows, people who come to these shows already know who the talent is. And therefore, the starting act is not as it's imperative, but it's not as imperative as it would have been had they not known. And the reason it's not as imperative is because they don't need to win people over. So listen to what I'm saying there, because they're not winning anybody over in the first 5 minutes of the act. The people that have already got people into the seats have already won people over. They've already paid the money. So they're not going to be looking to that person to try to win them over. So the first question you got to ask yourself, you said it's your first, so probably the answer is probably not. But something generally, it's not the rule, but something generally that's quick, establishes who you are, and involves as many people as possible. And I don't mean to bring 50 people out of the audience. I just mean, you know, do something with everybody. Bob Cassidy's philosophy would to use a macro effect. If you need to use everybody and whittle it down to one person, then do something relatively quick that's on the stage to prove what it is that you do. Show everybody what the ethos of the show is. That's a very good way to start. Once you've established yourself a little bit, there's time for monologues. There's time for, you know, games and things like that. I mean, I'm not saying that games are not bad for somebody that's starting as well. A game's always a good way to open a show. You look at David Berglass. One of David Berglass's ethoses with his lives or philosophies when his live shows went out where it's great to do a game. It's great to play a game where the audience have the ability to win something, because we invest more when we feel we have the chance to walk away with something. People love competitions, and if they didn't, when they're watching things like Bullseye or Catchphrase or shows like that, they wouldn't be shouting out the answers. So to answer your question, anything that's game show related is pretty good. Anything that gives them the chance of winning money is pretty good. Anything that shows who you are and what it is that you do and sums it up relatively quickly is pretty good. And that's really an easy formula that you can follow to present the opening of your stage show. I mean, obviously there's a lot more intricacies than that, and I don't want you thinking that that's the rule, but that's a good rule to follow. Anything that's dangerous, anything that's, I'm not telling you to do smash and stab. I'm not telling you to do anything that's related to anything dangerous, and I hold no responsibility for that. But anything that's like that is usually good. Anything that's game show related is good. Anything that is going to grab people's attention and get their attention fast. And I know that formula works because I've used it for years. And whenever I'm writing, that's the formula I tend to stick to. And if it's somebody that's a little bit more well known and people know their story, then what we do is we change that very slightly. So I hope that answers that. Do I perform using tarot deck, or any suggestions for tricks using a marked tarot deck like Bunny Cup Tarot by Phil Smith? Yes. I can't say too much right now, but I do have some thoughts on using a tarot deck and a marked tarot deck. Maybe you just hit upon something that we might be working on. I'm not going to say whether you have or we haven't. So, Turner Q+A, Peter, do you know what remote viewing is? If you do, what's your opinion on it? Okay, so remote viewing is a really interesting thing, and it depends how far you want to go back with stuff like this. I mean, in Russia, they've held like various experiments with stuff like this. They had things like Operation Paperclip, where they tried things like this, and then more recently Project Alpha. Project Alpha were obviously the inspiration for the film The Men Who Stare at Goats. And with stuff like that, what's really interesting is the psychedelics that they pumped people with to be able to do this remote viewing stuff. But for those people that are watching that don't know what remote viewing is, and again, there's a lot more experiments that have taken place in the world outside of that. There were Project One, there were Project Z, and that were with Geller and people like that. And if you watch Uri Geller, Uri Geller's got a great film that's over at urigeller.com. It's like a documentary of his life where it shows you what he went through when he were being tested and stuff like that. But this is what remote viewing is. Essentially, there'll be an article, a box, a drawer, an envelope, or something that's sealed in some way that's a distance away from where you are. And what you're going to do in your mind is you're going to close your eyes, and then you're going to spiritually transcend and travel astrally to that place. Read what that thing is, and then come back, and you're going to divine the content of what that is. Now, that's wholly different to astral projection, which you can have a projector and a receiver operating at the same time. So if you've got two soldiers or two people that are practicing this at the same time, one can be astrally projecting something while somebody's trying to remotely view what that thing is. So it might be they're holding something whilst these project it, and they meet in the middle and talk. And there's a great film called, I think it's the Big Fat Ninja or something like that. I can't remember. It's Chris Farnell or Chris Farrell or something like that. But he does it in that, and these ninjas talk to each other using that. So yes, I do know what it is. I have a lot of thoughts on astral projection and remote viewing. But in a nutshell, years and years ago, one of the first TV shows I ever worked on were on an army base, and they had something that were hidden in an army base that were guarded by armed guards, and the performer, who I won't name, had to travel and remote view what was inside this box or inside this army base, getting past the armed guards and everything else. Of course, we didn't use remote viewing, but it were a really interesting piece because we managed to remotely view what were inside this army base, and nobody ever stepped foot on the base. My opinion on it is that it's a really nice thing to think that it exists. And I've had people that have been in my life that claim that they've done things like this, and I know people that say that they can do this. I find that it tends to fall flat whenever it's put under scrutiny. And that's something that's, whether that is my declaration of its non-existence, I don't know. But these things, they tend to not be consistent enough to be considered credible. I'm not saying people can't do it, and if somebody can do it, I'd love to see it. If somebody can do anything like it, I'm an open-minded skeptic, I'd say. But it's a great plot. It's a really great plot. And technically, we all remote view, but people like Uri Geller had really, really clever ways, and I'm good friends with Uri, so I'm going to be careful what I say. But Uri Geller had really great ways to make it seem like he were remote viewing. And I remember whenever he'd do a close-up drawing duplication, so he'd got the information using traditional techniques or whatever technique Uri used, I don't know. But he got the information, and then he'd say, you know, once I was in New York and there was the CIA, I was in California, and the CIA were all the way over in New York, and they had a drawing just like this one in an envelope, and it took me nearly 8 hours, but I traveled in my mind and I managed to see where it was. And then he picks up on this. And when he picks up on this, what it did is it confirmed that he'd done this long distance remote viewing to figure out what the CIA had drawn in an envelope. And I really love the fact that he used that confirmation bias or that confirmation principle to confirm that he'd done it long distance. So, you know, my opinion is that, yeah, I really don't know whether it exists, but I've certainly not seen it in my lifetime. I've got 1,000,001 methods that I've used on TV and other shows. We actually have we had a spectator, and I think I worked on something in 2015 or 16 in Ireland. Again, Ireland's most notorious performer, creator. I'm not going to say who it is, but we worked on a show that went out again to thousands upon thousands of people, and we had somebody in that show remote view and do something in that show where an actual person did it. But yeah, so that's that. Let's have a look at this. What is the best cold reading book and the best cold reader you know? And that's Oppenheimer. So cold reading is a really interesting thing, and it's very different. It's very difficult to quantify. It's very difficult to quantify what's considered good. Now, because good readers don't look for hits and misses. Mentalists look for hits and misses, and the reason we look for hits and misses is because what we do is about success. You know, you can't just go into a live event, or you can't sit with somebody and start trying to gain hits. Psychics really don't care about that stuff. What they do is they speak with a confidence, and real readers speak with a confidence that suggests that they're all knowing, so they don't really count hits and misses. But that's what makes it easy for somebody like a mentalist to pick it apart. The best cold reader, and I don't know this person, is a psychic called George Anderson, not the mentalist. George Anderson's a great mentalist, but George Anderson, the medium, is, in my opinion, the best cold reader because of his technique. He has a really interesting technique and process, and his accuracy is incredible. He's like a really, really interesting, credible person. He's probably the best that I've ever seen, but he doesn't go for hits and misses. You know, he's doing it for real, in inverted commas. In terms of being able to get great hits, cold reading is a really easy thing. You know, once people see you cold reading, once people start to see you giving readings, then people instantly latch onto it in a different way to mentalism. And it's really difficult to say too much because, again, I'm working on something like this and I don't want to tip too much, but I will say this. Anything can be used in a cold reading setting. Anything can be used as an oracle to give a reading. For example, this dinosaur head. If I look at that, it might be you're the sort of person that's an old soul. And I think you past your days now are going out and partying. For you, a Sunday afternoon's about relaxing. It's about your own time. It's about being in your own space. And for that reason, I'd say you're quite hermitical in the way that you operate. And I look down at this cup. You know, I think you're the sort of person now that's looking at things more positively and optimistically than you did in the past. For you, it's now the cup's half full as opposed to half empty. The phone, you know, like I can jump to these. You're great at communicating where it is that you need to communicate, but I feel from time to time you just wish that somebody would communicate with you the way that you're communicating with them. And I think that's one of your bugbears. And I'd also go as far as saying that now, because of past adversities, you almost wear a mask. You wear a mask to keep people at arm's reach, but when you let people in, you're the light in their life. You're the sort of person that lights up the dark areas of their life. And I think people come to you in times of a crisis. So anything can be used as an oracle, but it's how you're using it. So cold reading is a really interesting and easy thing. You've just got to be pretty good at doing it. The best resources for it are just to watch psychics and mediums. There's nobody better. People believe them. They don't believe mentalists. So that answers that question. Hey, Norman, how's it going? Sam Sugarman says, the bed's all mine now. He's kicked pig cake out of it. Mike, can you tell us more about your experience at the BAFTAs? Honestly, I don't want to sound ungrateful. It's such a great accolade and an experience, and to go there and to be, you know, with free champagne and free wine. I don't drink champagne and wine. I'm not into sushi and egg rolls and all this fancy stuff, what they were eating. It's not me. So I almost felt like I didn't belong in the room, if I'm really honest. You know, I'm seeing people rubbing shoulders, and I knew everybody that were in our party, and I'd met other parties from things that I'd worked on before, and people were talking to me. But I really looked very different from everybody else that were there. Not that I care that I looked different. It just, for me, it wasn't my area of comfortability. So my experience there was that it were all a little bit fake. And that's, you know, being honest, if I'm being open, it all felt like it were, everybody cared too much about this because it were their life. It were them, it were their identity. And me, I sort of felt like, no, this is just 1% of who I am, you know? And so it felt like to them it were everything, and to me it wasn't. And it sort of separated me from them a little bit. It was funny watching people ad-lib round the teleprompter, because where I was sat, and maybe when this gets televised you'll see, because I think they're televising it, but they record it, they pre-rec it, and then I think they put it out as live, which is mad, but it definitely not live. Where I was sat, I could see the teleprompter, and I could see that, you know, the operator of the teleprompter over this side and the teleprompter over here. And it was really interesting watching people dance around the teleprompter to be able to ad lib, and the areas that they added jokes. And I saw notes being added. I mean, somebody, I'm not going to say who it was, but somebody who was well known made a couple of risky jokes, and the teleprompter person, in inverted commas, put stop with the jokes. And I thought that were really interesting. So that one of my favourite behind the scenes things. But yeah, I left. I didn't stay for the after party. Yeah, so I hope that answers your question. Let's have a look at this. Manel says, make him sleep on a glass table. I think that's what Pigcake needs. What Manel's referring to is, I nearly killed Pigcake when we filmed. He lost 4 litres of blood. It wasn't a joke. Like, I genuinely nearly vetoed Pigcake, for which I'm sorry, but not sorry now. He's all right, because it's one of the greatest things that's ever happened to him. It's how he leads a conversation. I've seen it in Miami. We'll meet somebody for the first time. I'll say, hey, do you know I nearly died? Sorry, Pigcake. But yeah, it's one of the greatest things that's ever happened to him. Standard. Cheers, Pete. Happy Easter. Question. I've just got time to check out the Ditto stuff on my shelf. With this special prop ever coming across, people want to check the pen mug more closely. Ditto. Stan, can you give me some more information on what that is? I'm usually, again, pretty good with this stuff, but I don't remember what it is that I did with Ditto. Is that the... You can speak, Sam.
It depends on the balls and the vision.
Ah, okay. Right, okay, so I knew, did I do the explanation for that? I think I flew to Paris to do the explanation for that. You don't need to be quiet. If there's what you want to say, Sam, you can speak. Sam's behind the camera trying to do like the actions of, like, I'm going to understand what this is. It looked like you were milking a cow from behind the back of the camera. In an office, I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, the thing is with stuff like that, what you got to remember, Stan, is that anything that's analog, in my opinion, is always better to digital or electronic. And one of the strong things about Ditto is that it's analog. So when it's just sat there, if it's sat there in plain sight for long enough, anything becomes part of its environment. So, like, let's imagine, for example, that you see a car that's just parked up in the most random area when you move into an area, and it's there on day 1. If it's still there by day 365, this car doesn't matter anymore. You don't see it, because it becomes part of the situation that it's in. So if for example, it just appeared in the middle of this desk, then people are probably going to question where it is. Whereas if you leave it to sit there for a little bit and people see it around your house, around your office, around your space, then it just becomes part of the furniture and nobody questions it. And if when they're using pens, you let them use this pot and they use it for other things, then it never gets questioned. Now, that doesn't mean you can carry it around a gig. I get that. But when you're using it, if you're going to use it around a gig, people expect you to bring things with you. So if you use it as part of the show and then you use it later on in your little close-up show or your act or your parlor-size show, then I don't think it's too bad. But yeah, sorry about that. I couldn't remember off the top of my head what Ditto was. Norman Gatsby, what do I think about the Cosmos wallet? I had a conversation with my friend Steve about this. I had a conversation with my friend Steve about this wallet. The honesty is that wallets are not really my thing. And that's the honesty, is if I'm going to do something, I'd rather try to do it as a connection with them. And that's not to say not to get it, you know, but I can't endorse anything that I've not actively used myself. So that's the answer to that. Pratik, here we go. Where did that go? That's flown off somewhere. Da-da-da-da. Right, wait a minute. I'm just scrolling back through these. I am like terrible with this stuff, so of which I have to apologize. Here we go. What is your go-to effect when someone says show me a trick or show me something? Now, I'm going to do a video on approaching people. I'm inspired to say that by, and a few people have asked this, but I'm going to do a video on approaching people and how you can get into performing routines. But when anybody ever asks me to perform something, the honesty is, and Pigcake will tell you this, Sam will be able to tell you this, anybody that's ever seen me, Sebastian will be able to tell you, Sebastian Farr, Steve, or anybody that spends enough time with me will be able to tell you this, is that there's no one answer to that question. I've got a full toolbox of tools and principles, and like you just saw when I was just pointing to things and giving a reading, I didn't know that question were going to be asked, but I were just rattling it off. You know, this is years and years of doing this every day of my life. So for me, it's just like breathing. So the honest answer to that question is I'll look at them and see what they've got. If I notice that they've got a small object or item, it might be a witch hand. If I notice that they're more spiritually inclined based on the way they're dressed, I might do something that's more spiritual related. I might ask them a couple of questions about themselves, talk to them and feel out what it is that I want to show them. I'll try to adapt what it is that I do into their world. So now it just feels like an extension of things that they already know. And therefore, because 75% of what I'm talking about, they already know, they're forced to believe the other 25%. Now really listen to that back, because there's a big, big secret in that. But you know, if it's somebody that deals with numbers, I'll do something with numbers. If it's something that's artistic, I might do something with art, because it's an extension of their world and therefore it becomes credible without having to justify or do anything. So that's the answer to that. I know it's sort of a loopholed answer, but it's very, very true. Let me have a little read of these. Let's have a look. Tom on Magic. Hey man, how are you? Thank you for coming in and thank you for saying hello. Do you have any shows in Australia and would you do one in Melbourne? Would love to connect. Do you know what? One of my good friends, Paul Shirley, again, one of the greatest minds in the world, is over in Australia, and I've been promising for years to come across and do something over there. So David just asked me a great question, but yeah, so I will be across there and I'd love to connect. Let's catch up. You know, let's do something. I'd love to do a show anywhere in the world. Let's talk about it. If you've got a place where you'd like me to lecture and you know a local club, if I have time and time permits, I'll definitely come. I'm all for memories and adventures. So that's it. Millie Vanilli. Yeah, ESP from that project was great. So psychological. Thank you. David Priest. If you had to choose an actor apart from yourself to play you in a movie about your life, who would it be and why? So that's a great question. And it's one of my favorite questions whenever I'm doing a celebrity divination. I always say if there were an actor that were to play you, play a part in as your life story, who would that actor be? I think it's a really great question. It's a very difficult question. I'd probably pick somebody that would nothing like me at all. And do you know why? I'd probably pick somebody that's the exact opposite to see how they'd fare having to be me. So if you watch, there's a film called Chopper. And if you don't know Chopper, it's based on the life of Chopper Read. And it's portrayed by Eric Bana. Now, Chopper's a real person in Australia. I'd recommend going and looking up Chopper on YouTube. The guy were insane. He were weird. He cut his own ears off in prison so that he could be moved to a seg cell, or a 43 as they call it in England. But he got moved across to this place in Australia. And Eric Bana played him in the film. Now, Eric Bana, by default, is nothing like Chopper Read. But he had to dig deep to learn to play that character. And what was so beautiful is that looking at it, there's nobody on the planet who could have played him better than Eric Bana. So the honesty is I'd probably pick somebody that's nothing like me, that looks nothing like me, that acts nothing like me, and then see how they fared, because they'd have to dig deep to be me. And that'd be the answer. And I don't know who that is. Maybe Danny DeVito. No, sorry, that's Pigcake. But no, the honesty is I don't know. Somebody who's nothing like me. So Spencer Elvis, when giving readings, how do you make them feel specific for the person that you are giving to? Spencer, you've just got to say what you feel. That's the hard bit, because we have a filter. We have an inbuilt filter to not say things and not follow our instincts. And the honesty is that sometimes what our instincts are telling us, our guts telling us in that moment, we just say it. And if we just say it, the person across from us will connect with it. Now, you've got to remember that giving a reading is give and take. they're trying to find the meaning behind what it is that you're saying. So if I'm looking down the camera at you right now, Spencer, it almost feels at this moment in time like educationally there's a weight that's on your shoulders. And I don't know whether that is something that you're learning, something that you're buckling down, but you're not sleeping as well as you'd normally sleep. And I don't know what reason that is. But that's what I'm feeling. It doesn't mean it's right. I can't see you. I'm just saying it. But maybe you could find the relevance in that. And that's what the idea of a reading is. Somebody who really wants to hear it, you say what you feel, and they're the ones that find the connection. It's not about being specific. It's about them finding that confirmation for themselves. So basically what you're doing is you're giving them a light in the dark, and it's their job to look around and tell you what they can see. So let's have a look. Always professional. Thank you, Moreau. David M. Hey, Pete, do you see yourself coming back to Los Angeles area for work again this year? Also, did you change your number? I'm assuming this is David, who I hung out with in Pasadena, in Altadena and Pasadena. Really, really great guy. And if it is, thank you for picking up the magazines for me. So for a lot of people watching this that don't know, another great thing that happened to me recently is that I was featured in New York Magazine, and there were a podcast called the Telepathy Tapes. And on the telepathy tapes, it were these autistic children and their caregivers, but they telepathically communicated. And I had somebody reach out and ask me my opinion on whether that was real or whether it was fake. And David went and picked me. David said to me, how many copies do you want? I said, 2 will be amazing. And then he just sent me a message. He said, I've got 5. And I was like, this is one of the best guys that I know. Such a really great guy. I have no plans to come back to Los Angeles yet. Right now I'm still on the same number, but it is changing and I will update you. But one thing that we could do is we could arrange to meet somewhere in America, or if you're coming to England, we could meet in England. I know we caught up at Blackpool very briefly, but it was great to hang out and have dinner in Los Angeles. Let's go meet somewhere. Come over to this area and I'll take you out to dinner. Alec Dixon, can we expect you at Magic Live? I talked to Pigcake about this, and Pigcake's worried because I can't say too much, but somebody came onto one of Pigcake's comments and threatened to beat Pigcake up. And he said that, and this person recently died and came back to life. And I know Pigcake wants a boxing match with him. So maybe if we can get that boxing match off the ground, I can get Pigcake there. But I think he's scared of getting beaten up. So depends. It all comes down to Pigcake and how busy we are. But I think it's looking good. I was talking to Dynamo recently, and I know that if he's going out there, I think if he's going out there, I'll probably go out to spend a couple of days with him, which will be really cool. Bobo, 100% catch up. Talk soon, dude, because use your input on something. Let's do it. Like, let's get together. I'm still waiting for you to contact me about, I don't know, did I give you, like, we were talking about the opening or the testimony thing. I don't know if I got that back to you, but let me know. Dion, it's really lovely to see you. Norman, do you run the effect, or is there the effect where you sit quietly on the bench and the people next to you have a pad with something written on it and don't talk? That's my effect, yeah. So that's my creation as a mentalism effect. I saw Marina Abramovich doing something really interesting in, I think it were in Holland, an art gallery, and then I watched a 60-second documentary about the man who stares into your soul. I thought this looks really interesting, and then I just did that, and so that is my effect. Do you mean, do I like publish it? Have I talked about it? I have talked about it on this latest thing that Pigcake and I shot. I'm going to do a lot more talking about it and the behind the scenes of that, but I've got a lot more stuff coming on YouTube that's like that, so keep up to date. Audi Muniz, hi Pete, you are amazing. Together with Richard Osterlind, they're my best mentalist. Any future book coming out, or any advice for a senior to be a mentalist? If you're a senior, you've got credibility on your side. Richard Osterlind is great, like really good guy. Very different to me in the sense that Richard has got, and when I say this, I mean it with all respect, he's probably got more of a professional feel than I have. I don't want to feel like I'm a professional mentalist, or that I do corporate events. It's never been my thing, and Richard's really good at that. He's like so clear cut, really nice. Excuse me, these incense sticks. But the way that I want it to feel is almost like there's a skill, has an ability, and that's their life. And we bumped into this amazing individual, and how they found themselves in these situations a little bit different. So it's not like you booked a corporate event entertainer. Richard really feels real, and he's really good at what he does, but we're different. So it's really nice that you've got those opposing sort of opposing likes, if you will. But the honesty is just be you and take what you've got in your life. There's nobody on the planet that's got your life experiences. There's nobody on the planet that has a mix of your memories. There's nobody on the planet that can do you better than you. And what mentalists tend to do is they tend to be a mentalist and then try to attribute areas of their life into that, instead of being themselves and trying to attribute areas of mentalism into that. So everything that you are and everything that you love, try to design everything that you do around that. And you'll have things to talk about for days, because when anybody asks you a question, you're not answering it from the perspective of a mentalist, you're answering it from the perspective of a human. And that's probably the biggest advice that I can give on that is, but you've already got credibility on your side, which is a really great thing. And I'm just finding now that most people, whenever I do something, they don't say, oh, that's amazing. That's it. What they say is, well, were you born with these abilities? And that's the question that I get a lot now. I didn't have that when I was 16, 17. So, you know, seniority is a really, really great thing. But thank you for that. Hey, Gabriel. Gabriel here. Do you think can a magic show be as popular as a singer or band and concert? Am I delusional if I think that a magic show has a competing chance about a K-pop artist? Anything that touches people, metaphorically, is a great thing. So the difference between magic and mentalism, and it's something that I've tried to figure out for years, what I call it is bottling lightning. And it's almost impossible to catch lightning in a bottle. And good songs do that. So there's times when a song will come on and people go, oh, I love this song, I remember, and they'll instantly go into a memory from the time that they heard that song. And, you know, music's synonymous with life and death. Music's synonymous with when we're feeling bad, we'll put music on. When we're driving our car, we'll put it on. Music's an area of life that probably plays a bigger role than we'd ever know. Every single advert has music on it. So to answer your question, if you're just solely doing mentalism, probably not. But that doesn't mean that you can't incorporate mentalism into what you're doing and create really interesting memories. If you can make people feel and you can inspire people, then there's no reason why it shouldn't. But what you've got to do is, instead of looking at them as separate entities, I know you're going up against those, but harness what it is that they use in your mentalism and put your show on from that perspective. And all of a sudden what will happen is you won't feel disjointed, unless you want to feel disjointed, and that's a purposeful choice as well. But you won't feel disjointed from that show. You'll feel part of it, but your part will stand out. See what I'm saying there? Like, because you're incorporating elements, you're not losing what the ethos of that entire show is about, but you're using elements that they're not using. And because of that, you'll always stand out, and therefore you'll resonate more than that in more ways than you could ever imagine. So hopefully that answers your question. Am I coming to Maryland? I don't even know if I've been to Maryland. I think I'll look into it. I'll definitely look into it. Good to see you live stream again. Quick and polite question. I ordered 2 res decks by the end of March. How long the procs to come to Germany? I know you're very best. Hey, JJ. So I said on my last video, I don't know if you saw that, but the decks are 100% on the way to you. What happened was I took the decks with me to America, and then I went on this RV trip, and I had to do some paperwork. And then on this RV trip, we were out in the middle of the desert and through Texas for most of it, in no man's land. And we're talking hours and hours and hours of driving. Like Pigcake just put Texas was 15 hours across, and it was 19 hours. It wasn't 15, it was 19, bro. So some drives are like 19 hours long. Then when we got to the back end of the trip, we were looking for places to post, and everywhere we tried to post toward the back end of the trip were a pain. And then we traveled back to Miami, and stupidly, I said this in my last video, I'm very honest about it, if I'd have posted them before I left in England, they'd have been there within a week or two. But what happened was, like an idiot, I took them because I thought it'd be better to post them from America, because I had to rush to get to America because I had some really important business to deal with in America. I had 48 hours to get out there. That when I got to the back end of that trip, I posted them from America. And that's a snafu on my part. So I can wholeheartedly apologize for that. I'm really, really sorry that I took them, but I just thought it'd be the best option to post them whilst I had them, because I'd have had to wait till I got back. Idiotically, if I'd have waited till I got back and posted them, they'd have probably been there about the same time. But just please bear with me. They're coming. They're definitely in the post. Pigcake can attest to the fact. I know, because he took them. He took them out to the postal service and he posted them and sent me photographs of it. So I know they 100% went out, but that's on me. And I'm not too big to hold my hands up and say we're a fool. I assumed I'd be able to get it done in California, and then we ended up in the desert. Then from the desert, we ended up in the arse end of nowhere, then right through Texas for 19 hours. By the time we got to New Orleans, we were Joshua Quinn, and then we just found ourselves in Miami. And it was like, so I'm really sorry, but I promise you they are on the way and they'll be there. So that's, I did address it in the last video that I did, but I just want you to know they are on the way, and I did say they were on the way in the last video. So I hope that helps. Thoughts on fourth dimension telepathy? First one plays second person name, but you ask them to switch and do one ahead, or is it overkill? Nope, but that's more like name place. So Bob Cassie has an interesting routine called name place. No, I think that it's overkill when you're doing it that way. I mean, if you look at the, I keep saying ethos in this video. I don't know why I'm obsessed with that word today. It's normally a multitude or philosophical or whatever, but today is ethos. I don't know why. If you look at that routine, actually a center tear would make more sense in name place because you're destroying one of the pieces. If you watch the video back, you'll understand. But center tear, I think, is a better tool, a much better tool than, yeah, a much better tool than a switch and a peak. But that's a different thing. As a Texan, I'm confirming this. Yeah, well, it took us 19 hours. Hi Pizza, hello, it's nice to see you, Yadhudev. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Juan Pablo Blanc, when you say digital product on your website, I mean, I imagine some PDF documents, but I imagine some of them might be links like on the Grail to the videos of Vimeo. No, what I meant by digital products is like, I meant like in Ditto. So instead of using like an electronic product, a prop that's electronic, or using a product that relies on Wi-Fi or an app or app-based mentalism, I mean like analog. That's what I mean by that, like a product that can't fail. Like instead of buying a Turner watch, and now just for reference, I get a lot of emails asking me about the Turner watch. It's nothing to do with me. I don't even know the creators are of that, so it's nothing to do with me. But that watch is a digital watch. It's an electronic watch. Whereas if you use the old Bev Bergeron idea from like 1959, or Bob Thurston with a pocket watch from 59, and then swatch this from Michael Weber in the 70s, that idea is analog. It's going to work every single time, whether there's a connection issue, nothing's going to fail. So always use analog techniques, and they do the same thing, if not better. To the audience, they look exactly the same. So that's one thing. I always try to avoid electronic or digital or app-based mentalism. That's what I meant by that comment. Professor T, how are we supposed to react when we do something incredible? That's the hardest bit, right? That's the hardest bit. And this is with the biggest lesson that I ever learned from David Berglass. And I remember sitting with David Berglass at a service station at about 3 o'clock in the morning. And I actually got David Berglass to eat a cheeseburger, which I don't think many people will be able to say that, but managed to get David Berglass to sit and eat a cheeseburger. We sat eating like service station, gas station burgers at 3 o'clock in the morning. And he nailed time after time like these incredible things. And I used to, whenever something amazing happened, I'd be amazed, and you'd see the delight in my face, and you'd see me reacting. And the lesson that I learned, he never told me this is the lesson, learn it. But from watching, I always take what I think is the best things that I learned from anybody. And the things that I took from David Berglass is that story and context is king. And also legend is an amazing thing. And I will talk about my rise in another video using like legends and other things, and how to spread rumors and other stories and other things, and how to generate legends and other little bits, and how to take chances. I'll talk more about that very openly in another video. But one thing that I saw David do is when he nailed this stuff time and time again, to him, he just sat there and he was like, this is what I do every day. So when you sit there, act invested during the process of sharing and disinterested during the moment of reaction. But not disinterested as if to say, go away, but disinterested in the sense that, like, look, I always knew this was going to be the outcome. You've almost got to be a bit cocky at that point, but not to the point it's egotistical. And that's what I saw David doing, and that's what I tried to replicate. So it's like, it might be, hey, like, boom, check it. You know, like, it might just be something like that. Have a look, please. Like, you know, this were going to happen. There's no dupes in there. Or like in the last video when I did the David Berglass thing, that's why I referenced that. But that's all part of acting. And some of those moments, and I've talked again in depth with Big Cake about this, is like the one ahead is the hardest piece to choreograph, because it's the simplest piece of mentalism to ever exist, but the hardest piece of mentalism to ever react to. Because when it comes out, if you know how a one ahead works, they're giving you the information, And when they give you that information, you have two choices. You could sit there and go, okay, oh, all right. It's like a really hard thing as an actor to know whether to react to it or not. It's like so hard to do. It's a hard balance to find that. And I think it's the same whenever you nail like the any card at any number, or you guess something that's incredible. You've just got to sort of sit there. And I have a drink with me, so I'll usually at that point take a look at my phone, or I'll have a drink and I'll just sit and look off to the side. Because when I look off to the side, or when it's not that I'm disinterested. It's just, yeah, this is my life. This is what I do, and it's a little bit strange, and it'd take me forever to explain it, but yeah, this is it. So that's sort of where I go with that. Hey, Kevin, how's it going? Kevin's a really great guy. Kevin and I chat all the time. Let's catch up, Kevin. By the way, is your second channel already on YouTube where you want to post this other stuff? And if so, what's its name? It is already on it's already on there, but I don't know the name of it. Maybe it's just, oh, it's Life Defies Logic. Life.defies.logic, I think. So that's life.defies.logic. Maybe Sam will be able to confirm that for me, or somebody in the comments, life.defies.logic. Juan Pablo, congrats on the Lambo. What color did you get? I got like a pearlescent white. It's like a really beautiful champagne-y white. I'm going to do a video of it. You'll see it soon. Millie Magic, have you ever done any synergy or cooperation with Spidey Hypnosis? I've not. But Spidey is incredible. So just a quick story about Spidey. And Spidey will be able to confirm this. I flew into Vegas about 2 years back maybe, and I had probably 10 to 20 of we flew in 10 to 20 of the best, who I'd consider the best mentalists and magicians in the world, into this room to design a television show. And we had quite a healthy budget for this television show. And we reached out to Spidey because I'd seen some of his stuff online, and also the talent, who I won't name, they'd seen his stuff. And we tried to get Spidey to fly in, and unfortunately we're busy doing something else on that exact time at that exact place. So our paths just crossed. But yeah, like, he were part of what I'd consider the A team of people I tried to fly in to spend time, and it were incredible, like having, Rand Pink, Andrew Gerard, Louis Laval, Banachek, Colin Cloud, and so many other names, Kent and Nepper, in this one room, and other people, Matt Mello. There were so many of us in this one place, and it were great, and Spidey would have been part of that list. So just impossible to get him in, but that's it. This whole story is amazing. Thank you, Gary. Damo, I feel deeply sorry. Such a harsh and traumatized childhood. Who in the world can be cruel to lock in a child, any person at all? Was that the uncle who you talked about in the Diceman doc? JJ, yes, partly, but not only that. Like, where we grew up, it wasn't really not commonplace when kids were bad. And when I say bad, I mean, like, we weren't really that bad. We weren't smashing windows, we weren't stealing things, we weren't getting brought home by the cops. We were a couple of scuffles as kids, fights, general stuff. Somebody'd nick a bike and you'd go sort it out. Just stuff on the council estate, and answering back, when you felt you were in the right, saying something, and that were really the catalyst for it, is that adults were adults and kids were kids. And if you've seen Matilda, I'm big, you're small, I'm smart, you're stupid, it were like that. And it were, when you turn around and say something that was smarter than what they could comprehend, the only way they could deal with something like that were to lock us away. So that were it, yeah. But there's a lot more to it, than that. And I don't want it to say it were a bad thing, because I wouldn't change it for the world. It's made me exactly who I am now. It's given me common sense. It's made me feel like I won't ever want to treat people like that. It's also made me feel better about the world around me, because, my scope of the world was so small that anything in my life is a bonus now. So I don't see it as a bad thing, but, thank you for that. Gotham, sending you love back as well. Colin, any advice for performers who have ideas they would like to share with the mentalism community? Tips on getting eyes on it and making a life through creativity? You're already doing it, bro. This is Colin feeling like. Colin, you've got some great stuff. If you want to share some of your stuff, if you want to work with me on something, I'm now starting to produce. I've got my own company, my own production company. I've made all the contacts that I need. I know everybody in the industry, and that's not me like bragging. That's me saying that's over time. I've slowly built up this community. I'd love to work with you on anything that you've got. I'm a real big fan of your stuff, and just know that I am watching, and there's people that say to me about your stuff from a distance, and I do see from a distance. If there's anything you want to send me, anything you want to work on, I'm more than happy to work with you and produce it. Also, Michael Murray's a very good shout. They're the places that I'd go to Again, I'm going to do a video later on discussing stuff like this, but if you ever want to have a conversation in private, even if you don't decide you want to work with me, I will help you in any way that I can. I'll tell you the things that I've learned over years of doing this stuff. But yeah, if you need any help, I can help you do that. Excuse me, this incense, it's got to stop, but it's the only way to make it look hazy. So how to create a customized mentalism learning plan by identifying performance weaknesses, e.g. reading, storytelling methods, and narrowing study material from endless resources. Now that's the hardest one. That's the hardest one, is narrowing those resources down into a compact yet practical series of ways that you can apply them, right? Sorry, I had to take a drink just because it was strong there, but it's difficult. You've just got to pick what you really love. And so just yesterday I was working on a show, and again, I'm not going to say really what this was, but we had a 10-minute act to fill, and we were boxed into being very careful on what we could use. And I'm going to try to be careful about what I say because I don't want to give anything away, but this were a live show, and this person's been on television quite a lot, like a hell of a lot, over the last 16 years, has done a lot of live shows, and their act goes out to a lot of people. And it's very easy to just go, shall we do a serial divination? Did that in the last show. Should we do a stapling and roulette? Did that 2 shows ago. Should we do something with this? Did that 5 years ago. Should we do this? Well, that were done on this podcast 2 weeks ago. Should we do this? Well, this were on this TV show back in 2015, and people remember me for it. So there's a box that you place yourself into. So what I tend to do when you want to narrow something down is say, right, forget all of that. Forget where you did it before. Forget what you've done before. Forget what you've seen before. We know what the plot is, and we know what the premise of this show is. Let's write down a list of every single type of mentalism effect. So it might be that you put book test, ACAN, telekinesis, like pyrokinesis, PK touches, and you just write them out. Spoon bending, drawing duplication, and you just write a list of every single type of effect out in a line. And then what you do is you say, right, forget whether they fit the style of this show, forget whether they fit the plot. We can make a script, and we can design this in a way that makes it look nothing like its original form and turn it into this. But what are your feelings about book test? Are your instincts, is your stomach saying to you that might work? Maybe. Okay, we'll keep that. What about spoon bending? Absolutely not. That's gone. And all of a sudden what happens is that list goes down to 10. And then you look at it again and go, okay, which ones are still a maybe now? And then it goes down to 5. And then of those 5, you start to design around those 5 things. And then you look at 3 of them and go, do they fit? Now we'll get rid of those. And now we're down to 2. Okay, which is the strongest of these 2? And then you're down to 1. And that's the one that ends up fitting, and then you build around. And all of a sudden, it doesn't matter whether it's done before. It doesn't matter if it's been used before. Your instincts have led you to know that's the one that you're going to work with. And the reason I mention that is the exact same here. When you're creating a learning plan, think about what resonates with you as a performer. Write everything out, even if it's spoon bending and you don't do spoon bending. I don't do spoon bending, but just write it out anyway. And slowly start to reduce this list from all the possibilities to maybes. Then take the maybes and which are the higher maybes and get rid of the rest of the maybes. And now what would I want to look at? And then all of a sudden collect resources from those areas and the best resources on the subject you've found in those areas and work on those. And then when you've got them, box them and move backwards to your higher yes maybes. And then start to look at those resources and then move back. And then what I do, and this is the bit that's controversial, is I'd highly suggest spending an equal amount of time looking at the things that you're not interested in. So look at all the things that you're not interested in, because it's great to have a vocabulary in those areas as well that is not open to you by just going through that area, like that bit of life blinkered. And I've learned more from the things that I don't like than the things that I have, because the amount of times I've been in a room and people have turned around and said, oh, we need this style of effect. I'm not designing effects for myself, right? I'm more often than not consulting. And if I'm consulting, my style is not necessarily their style, and therefore it makes sense for me to want to learn things from different areas. And also I've found that I've fallen in love with things that I said I'd never do. Anagrams, for example, you look at Bigger Fish 2. I said in Bigger Fish 2, I will never do an anagram. I don't like them. I said in Dare to be Bold, I can't find a justification for a centre tear. I don't think it's right. And then you grow and you start to fall in love with things because you change them. And all of a sudden, you've got a learning resource that you never thought you'd have. You have an archive. And that's exactly what I've got. If I were to go into my phone, I could type anything in. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. And in my phone, I've got I mean, you probably won't be able to see it from there, but I've got my resource, and my resource is my notes. And this is it. And I make notes on absolutely everything. And these are not short notes. Do you know what I mean? And that's where these resources come from, you know? And that's it. Just make notes. And this is this. There's a notepad. I don't know where I've put it, but there's a notepad just here. There's 5 notepads over there. There's 12 notepads in my bedroom. Like, there's just so many different notepads and things that I take notes in. I have my own resource, my own archive that I can dip into whenever I want to learn something. And if I want to give something a particular area of focus, that's how I do it. So Mike Rose, hi Pete, new to your ideas and material. Clearly I've been hiding in a rock, really enjoying it. Ordered the Grail, really looking forward to getting my teeth into it. So just to let you know, that went out today. So it's on its way to you. And so, yeah, I really do hope that you love that. Matt just said he got his Grail yesterday. Thanks, mate. I'm glad they're arriving. The last video that I did were talking about my postal process. So if you don't know my postal process, go look at the video that says that you need to know something, and it'll talk you through all of that. So Ricardo, do you think that there's a proper order to learn mentalism the right way? Do you think there's a logical progression or ideal path to really learn mentalism a solid and structured way? The honest answer to that question is it all depends on you. So, for example, if you were to talk to Pigcake, I know that Pigcake's favourite mentalist of all time was Richard Osterlind. And therefore, he needed to learn Richard's ways. I were always schooled in Bob Cassidy's ways. And if you look at the Penguin Lecture with Richard Osterlind and Bob Cassidy, you can see how opposing their styles are. So the best way to learn is just find areas of life and performers that resonate with you. And if you like somebody's style, like I was saying earlier on, don't be afraid to take what you love and leave what you don't, but always take something. So if you read a book, look at an effect, and even if you think, I absolutely hate this effect, the proper process there is to look at it and stop looking like that through that lens. Look at it and say, I love that one thing. It might even be that you hate the effect, but you love the fact that the title's written in a Sharpie pen and you go, one day I'm going to write a book like that. It might be the layout. It might be the font of the text. It might be that you go, you know what, this one sentence is a really interesting sentence. The whole effect as a whole, I'm not a fan of, but just take that one sentence and put it in your notes. And all of a sudden what will happen is you'll be taking the best of the best, but there'll be nobody on the planet that has that series of information in that order, put in that way. And therefore you'll grow as you, and there'll be nobody else like you, but you'll be learning from the best. You'll be learning from yourself. You'll be taking what you love and what resonates with you, and that'll change. Your tastes will change over time. So, you know, that's the proper way to earn it. There's not really an order. There's not really an order to that, but, you know, that's the way that I do it. It's just find what resonates with you now. Learn that. Be excited, inspired. Charlie Ewish, lovely to see you. Thank you for last weekend. Charlie's were really great. Like, such a creative guy. And I stole one of your protein bars, so I owe you a protein bar, Charlie. I haven't forgotten. I promise you, next time I see you, I'll give you. So we were in a headquarters last week, and there were a live show that they were developed down south in London. Again, I'm not going to talk about whose show that is, but they were a part of something of mine that ended up in that show. And I stayed at the headquarters, the office, and Charlie is, I'd say, I go as far as saying the creative producer and one of the directors of that show. And whilst I was staying there, I opened the fridge. I were a little bit peckish, so I had one of the protein bars. So I haven't forgot, Charlie. I promise you I'll get you your protein bar back. Millie, you're more than welcome. Let's have a look at this. Thanks for the stage tips. No problems. Deanne, Pete, I love you. Well, thank you for tuning in. Like I say, without you guys, there'd be no me. Gustavo, my number's not changed yet. I've got your message. I will be getting in contact as soon as everything's copied over. John O'Toole, Pete, do you do tech, iPads and phones openly in tour presentations? So the only iPads and stuff that gets used generally when I'm looking at them in a tour scenario is for lighting rigs, sound cues, and that's if they're not on analog boxes, small switch boxes. Generally, you'll find that techies tend to use either full-blown rigs and PCs if it's big, you know, DATs and things like that, which we don't really use anymore because they're more analog. But iPads tend to be the thing that gets used, and we look at things and review things on iPads. But in terms of the methods and in terms of the actual presentation, as little as possible. And there's a reason that I very rarely use anything like that. And it's the same as using a whiteboard on stage, but people don't think that anything that like a whiteboard or anything like an iPad or anything like a mobile phone has a glare. And because it has a glare, half the audience lose the reaction because only half the audience can see it at a time. So I tend to use anything that's got a matte finish on it. That doesn't mean that you can't get matte laminate stickers that go over it and stop the glare. That works, but really I tend to avoid anything like that. If you're talking about on stage, but backstage, yes, everybody uses them. All producers are using them and other things. But yeah, not on stage because of the glare. And I'd also avoid using whiteboards. I'd avoid using glossy papers. I'd avoid using phones and things like that, unless you're going down into an area that has no light, and then you can use something like that if the lights are down, but I don't tend to use them. Let's have a look at that. Arson, will you be doing a release on 1 stage Q&A and 2 how to create a show? Maybe down the line. I think I'll do an actual video on how to create a show, my processes, and maybe show a few videos of some of the shows that I've worked on and other things coming down the line. I'll give that information away for free. You know, like my whole thing is there that I want everybody to be the best that they can be. And if I can impart any knowledge, I'll 100% do that. I'm not saying I'm the best person to talk to on that subject, you know, but I'm saying I've got my fair share of experience in it, and I've failed more times than most people have tried. And I'm very open when I've failed. I've failed a hell of a lot, and I've had to build myself back over the years, and learning quickly to fix those fails and quickly to fix things that are oversights is where the real skill is when it comes to building those shows. Like I said, just yesterday, we have this tour that's going out starting tomorrow, and we were yesterday, designing the 10 to 15 minutes needed in between just yesterday, because we rearranged the order of the show after doing the 2 friendly runs. So still, you know, we're always making changes and always bettering ourselves, but I will talk about that in the future. Sicilian, I appreciate you. B Will, what's good, Peter? Hey, how are you? Respect to you. Charlie Ewish, that's how Pig tried to flirt with my sister in Miami, talking about his battle scars. I am telling you that that's his lead. He doesn't get it. It's hard to talk about, but I'm telling you for a fact, that's his go-to now. That's his go-to. Every conversation that I catch him in, 2 minutes later, if I walk off or come back, it's, you know, I nearly died. And I asked him, he says it's because it makes him feel 6 foot tall. And I'm like, okay, well, that's that.
Making him talk about his scars more times in Blackpool than I saw magic in the Ruskin.
Sam just said he heard him talk about his scars more time in the Ruskin than he saw magic, which is, you know, how much should one charge for their first close-up gig as a beginner? I watched your Talk Over Teas episode 1. So Talk Over Teas were really interesting. I'm thinking about rejuvenating that series because it were like such a great series. Like it was just such a good series. But to answer your question, you know, when I first started out, I probably wasn't charging enough. I was charging 50 quid a gig, which is not worth it when you think that it's 50 quid for an hour. But what goes into that is hours and hours and hours, you know. But just my advice is just go do some gigs. It doesn't matter what you're charging. You know, if you're doing it for a living, then look at what you need to earn in a week. So let's say that your outgoings are, I'm just going to make a number up. Let's say your outgoings are £250 or $250 a week, which in 2025, it's probably impossible to believe that. But if, let's say they're £250 a week, you've got to look at how many gigs you realistically think that you could do in a week. So let's say that you think to yourself, you know what, realistically, I could do Friday, I could do Saturday, and maybe I could do Wednesday. Look at earning £50 more than what your outgoings are, and then divide it by 3 and just see where it is. You've got to, if that's going to be what you're doing to make a living, that should be what dictates how much you earn. But that doesn't mean that you're at that level to be able to charge that. That's an entirely different conversation, and there is nuance to it, or there are nuances to it. But just figure out what it is that you need to earn in order to be able to, you know, set your price. If you don't need to earn anything, it doesn't matter. You know, some people just do it for the love of it. For me, I know what it costs me to lose. I know what it costs me to lose if I take a day away from something else. So I got to look at it like that, and that's what. It doesn't make it practical for me to be going back to the bars up here. The maximum I could earn is about £200-300 for a gig. Not worth it. Like, absolutely not worth it for me. You know, not worth it for me whatsoever to take that time out to prep for it. Whereas You know, I've thought about running a little theatre show for nothing, because I do that for the love of doing it. And I am going to do that. And I'll give tickets away. I'll leave them in phone boxes. I'll leave them in the back of taxis. I'll have people giving them away outside the theatre. That's not, I'd rather pay to do that. I'd rather gift it, because that's going to be story based and that's going to be a labour of love. And that's an entirely different subject altogether. But the honest answer is, you know, like, just charge what you need to make. And that's it. And what will happen is, by necessity, you'll get better at what it is that you're doing. And that certainly happened to me. Sam, Lloyd Barnes has said, I've got to ask you why it is covering his face with his hat. Why you got called glowworm. I'm sure he'll tell me that later on. Piggy, need to ban someone for me. Need you to ban someone. Oh, is that Lloyd Barnes? Okay. So Daniel Young. So Daniel's a great, again, Daniel, I'll tell you a story about Daniel, and he probably won't like me saying this, but this is a fact. There's a lot of mentalism things that people know on the market and have seen on the market, and we're talking over a range of products, physical products and other things that Daniel Young has created, and he don't get the credit for them. And Dan's one of the greatest mentalists and guys that I know. He used to work at Davenport's. He's a character, he's an absolute character, but I love him for that. But he doesn't get the credit he deserves for a lot of the things that he's created. And there's big artists, so I won't name, that have literally seen his ideas, he shared them with him, and they've taken them and they've produced them and put them on the market. And that's God's honest truth. But what he says is, I saw you just talk to a woman behind the bar and they were impressed without any tricks. That's because we talked about life. And that's one thing that's important. Like I said to you, be yourself first and then sprinkle the elements of mentalism in if you need to. A lot of the time you can seem like you know more than you know without doing a thing. And if anybody wants to verify that, talk to Justin Miller. We were in a bar in Ohio, and he almost set me a bit of a challenge. He's like, oh, these are the two most difficult people to work with. You just can't show them a trick because they can't follow anything. Go do something. And I just sat and I talked to them, and within like 2 minutes, these two people were crying, thanking me. Can we pay for your drinks? I'm like, no, I don't do it for that. And Justin's like, what did you do? What did you say? And I'm like, oh, we just talked about life. We just talked about things that were going on. And he's like, but they don't open up to anybody. I'm like, well, you know, that's just how it is. And that's the thing. So the honesty to that is, yeah, like, that's it. What else is great in Pasadena? Driving at 90 miles an hour the wrong way down the road. That would Pig Cake that asked that. What is the right way to dress when performing mentalism? It depends who's booking you, and it depends what your dress code is, and it depends who you are. And the way to answer this question is look at music artists, right? So let's say we take somebody that's a music artist that we know. Let's say we take Ziggy Stardust. Like, I know he wore some suits, but could you imagine Ziggy Stardust not dressing the way that he wanted to dress? Now, if it's a corporate black tie event and you've been booked for it, then you've got to dress exactly how the dress code says. But I get booked by companies like Hugo Boss. I've been booked by Google. I've been booked by big banking companies. And again, I can't even remember the name of this company, but it's a huge company. It's a banking corporation that has a lot of banks under its umbrella. And they just told me to dress edgy, because that's how I portray myself. And so usually they want me to come as me. I did a gig for Hugo Boss where I rode in on a Harley Davidson and just spent the night palm reading. And I was dressed exactly how I'm dressed, or how I dress. So it depends. If they know you for who you are, they're booking you for who you are. For example, if they booked a rock star at a black tie event to come and play 2 songs or 3 songs, and it was somebody like, you know, or anybody like Snoop Dogg or anything like that, do you think 50 Cent's going to turn up in a suit and tie? I mean, he might do if they're paying him enough, but the honesty is it's just be you. And if the events that are booking you are paying your wages and that you need to rely on them to survive, then your ego should never get in the way of putting food on your table. So dress the way that you're expected to dress. But the honesty is, I'm just me. So a lot of the time now when I get booked, I'll say, is there a dress code? And they'll say, oh, just wear what you want to wear. And that's it. And I come as me. And I always dress smart. Don't get me wrong. I don't turn up in a pink t-shirt and whatnot. But I were a little dig at Pig Cake. But no, I just turn up as me. So I'll wear dark clothing that's smart casual. Jacket like this is nice. I probably won't wear something with a design on it like this. I might wear like a black t-shirt. I wouldn't turn up in a baseball cap. I'd do my hair. I'd actually have my beard groomed and styled. I might wear a bike chain and the chain on my pants. I'll go and I'll wear my boots. But I'll look smart. I won't look scruffy. So that, you know, it all depends on where you're working. Why? Hi Pete, if you could only do one effect with one method for the rest of your life, what would it be? The effect would just literally be to talk. I wouldn't do anything. I'd just sit and I'd want to get to know somebody for 2 minutes. If I had 2 minutes, I could make it feel like I knew more than I ever did know based on the way that I talk. And that's what I do. Manel said he'd pay to see Pigcake fight Jabrizi. Well, let's put in the comments of this video who we think could win out of Jabrizi and Pigcake. I don't know. So Ostalin says, I like it when Ostalin says, Pigcake says, I like it when Ostalin takes off his glasses. That's one of my favorite things on planet Earth, and I'm not going to go into what that is, but it's next level. Matt, what are some ideas on presenting mentalism in a light-hearted, funny way, something that isn't too esoteric? Again, that comes down to what it is that you're wanting to pretend. I mean, a lot of, if you do something that's self-deprecating, then that'll work in that scenario. Never take it too seriously. I mean, I like that whole mysterious character that knows I'm, you know, I wander into one place. I'm like a biker that ended up in the wrong bar. You know, that's sort of the feel of what it is that I do. But if you want to do it just in a fun and you know, non-esoteric or esoteric way, then just do it and be you, and your character will shine through. It doesn't have to matter. It doesn't have to mean anything. It doesn't have to be psychic or, you know, psychological. It can be, let me show you the funnies, and try to find little things like you could say to somebody, think of a joke for me, and then you guess, and a joke you know the punchline for, and you get them to write the punchline down, and together we're going to be a two-person telepathy act, a comedic one, and one of them says the joke and then you say the punchline. Do you know what I mean? You can make it so that it can be light and interesting based on the makeup of what it is that you're creating. So again, listen back to what I just said there, but it doesn't have to have consequence. We'll do about another 20 minutes, Sam. Is that all right with you? And then I'm doing my first mentalism, my first paid walk around gig. I want to do pure mentalism instead of adding traditional magic, but I worry it might be too confrontational for a nightlife in Dallas. What do you think? Let the moment take you, Devontae. Let the moment take you. If you feel at a moment you need to do ambitious card because that's your backup and that's what's going to resonate with that audience, do it. It never hurt Darren Brown when he said, what you're about to see is a mixture of magic, suggestion, misdirection, and showmanship. I achieve all the results you've seen here by a mixture of those techniques or whatever, right? Like, it never hurt him to do card tricks. It never hurt him to portray himself as somebody who did magic. And if you ever feel like you need to break the ice with a piece of magic, and that's something I don't really do anymore because people don't know me as a magician, but one thing that I found is a really great way to do that is to turn around and say, do a couple of mentalism things, and if you feel that they're not banging, they're just not hitting, look at your audience and say, let me share with you where this all started for me. You know, I started out as a magician, and I started realizing when I asked people to take a card, I could guess what card they were taking before they ever took it. So I'm going to take you on a journey through where I came from to where I am now, and then show them a few tricks, and then get to the point, force them a card in the middle somewhere after you've G'd them back up, excited with the jumping up, excited with the change in the hand, get them to pick a card, guess what it is, you've now got them G'd up and amazed, and you say, then I left all that behind, and then hit them with a solid piece of mentalism. But now you've done something that's fun, light-hearted, sprinkled in that mentalism, dismissed it, and then showed them what you do now. And if anybody ever asks, what does this guy do, or what does this person do, you know, what happens there is you've got to run up to that point and you've managed to sprinkle in the magic without it stepping on the toes of the mentalism. And again, play that back because that's a great little piece of advice. I've been wanting to reach out to see if you'd be willing to consult on a theatre show I've been working on, maybe via Zoom. Send me an email, peterturnermind@hotmail.co.uk. So that's mind@hotmail.co.uk. Present moment poetry. Huge fan, thank you. When are you going to be in America with Dynamo? I don't know. We're going to look to see if we can. We're going to look to see if we're going to live, but there'll be a few of us if we go over there. We'd love to hang out. Audio Monies. Ostalin is more technical and you are more psychological in the way you use a lot of hypnosis, pseudo, that thing I love. I love your legacy books, which are my treasure. Well, thank you for getting the legacy books. You know, the legacy books, a lot of people think that they were similar to the masterclass series, but there wasn't a lot in there that wasn't in the masterclass series. And actually, that's one of my favorite series of books. I absolutely loved writing them. I'd have probably done it a bit differently if I could go back, not the content, but where I'd have placed them and how they'd have been released. Super Dunninger, or Dunninger, really lovely to see you. From someone who is graduating the master degree in uni, Where did that go? There we go. Graduating the master degree in uni and gaining some first working experience should these days start as an employee and work better towards becoming a freelancer. The honest answer is, like, look, with this stuff, just have fun. Like, your master degree in university should come first. And I've had this discussion with somebody that's close to me in my life. I'm not going to go into again who it is because I don't want them feeling I'm talking about them, but I am talking about you if you're watching this and you know who you are. If you're already on your path to doing something, only if it truly feels right to leave should you leave. If your instincts are telling you to leave and to do something else, then do it. But my advice would be, look, you've started something, so see it through. See it through to the end. And then decide to go freelance and decide on doing stuff at that point. Matt, whatever happened to Matt Mello? I liked his DVD. So it's Matt asking about Matt Mello. Matt Mello's still around. So Matt Mello is an absolute genius. He showed me a version of French Kiss that is probably one of the best mentalism pieces I've ever seen. And it's released as like a paragraph in a book somewhere, and I'd read it and just dismissed it. But I'd taken from it a sentence that I loved and didn't like the effect until I saw it. So sometimes reading something, we can't visualize it until we try it. But it were great. Matt Mello is a genius. So I'm trying to find a word to put it. He likes to stay behind the scenes. That's what I'll say. Because I don't want to talk about his character. He's one of these characters that gets in his head a little bit. And I love him for that, but he stays behind the scenes. So this is Stuart Etheridge. I'm just an amateur with no desire to go gigs or work professionally, but I'm obsessed with everything you do and produce. As someone who wants to perform to people, I know what your tips are. As someone who performs to people, I know what are your tips for credibility. Don't worry about being credible. Just go and perform. And what happens is this, look, when somebody as young as a kid is learning how to walk, the child's not worrying about learning to walk. The child's worrying about falling. That's it. And once that child builds its confidence to learn it's not going to fall, it finds that it's already walking. And this is a very similar sort of thing. It's a very similar sort of thing that as soon as you start doing it and you stop thinking about that, but you're just doing it, you'll find that credibility comes naturally without having to try. And I want to thank you for following, my journey and stuff. So like, yeah, if you need any advice, again, just tune in and I always ask. I'm always here to give advice. So Matt, when I perform, I can't help shake the feeling of being like an actor. It doesn't feel natural or like myself. Is that normal? So everybody experiences that. That's imposter syndrome. We're always comparing ourselves to somebody who we consider better than us. But like I said earlier, nobody will ever be us. So it starts out feeling like you're acting. And if you look back at my older videos, like go back, like I will put this video up. It's embarrassing, but there's me talking, performing an effect called Mind Plant, and I've got this glass of water in my hand and I've got a pen in the other hand, and I'm there going, "Hi guys, this is Peter Turner here, and I'm about to share with you an effect I called Mind Plant." And it's like, I wanted to be posh. I wanted to be something I wasn't. I wanted to be eloquent. I wanted to make it feel like I were this exquisite gentleman. And that's when you feel like an actor, when you're trying to be something you're not. And when you let go of the pretense and you let go of everything and you just share your own life experiences, you'll still feel like an actor because let's be realistic, to some degree there is an air of acting. Sometimes you've got to say you know things that you don't. Sometimes you've got to portray that you're doing things that you're not. Sometimes you will be doing what you're doing. But you're always going to feel that way. And I ask you this. Think about Morgan Freeman playing Red in Shawshank Redemption. Do you think through that entire show that were being filmed, Morgan Freeman went back to his dressing room and went, "Man, I feel like an actor"? He didn't. Morgan Freeman went back to his dressing room and went, "This is just what I do." And that's it. And once you, instead of trying to think that being an actor is a bad thing and you embrace it and you start to learn to be a better actor, then all of a sudden what happens is you'll start losing those feelings and you'll find yourself and you'll find that the acting become one and you're not having to really think about it anymore, but you'll still feel imposter syndrome from time to time. Look, everybody does. Do you know what I mean? I still get anxious now when I'm releasing something. Pigcake will tell you that if I'm filming something and I'm working on something, If it's not absolutely perfect, and if it's not right, then I'll just get annoyed, and I'll start getting in my own head. You ask Pig Cake, and I promise you this, he'll tell you this, that when I realized that he wasn't using the gimbal to film the road shots, the driving shots during the trip, and I thought in my head, oh no, people are going to see this. People are going to see that there's a bit of shaky footage. People are going to see this, and this is not really what I wanted. Sometimes, you know, like I feel like I'm an imposter if I'm not living up to what I've built in my own head. And he'll tell you more than anybody. Sam will tell you this, and he'll better tell you this after the end of working with me for this month, that my standards are like, when it comes to obsessing over the smallest of things and doing things, I do things in a very particular order, in a very particular way, whether it's, you know, sheets or postage. It's one job at a time, and if anybody rushes me, I say back off, we're doing one job at a time, and I make sure it's right. And if something's not right, if somebody doesn't communicate with me that it's not right, and I have to guess, like he'll tell you that I can be like, right, this is not right, why didn't you say something? And I can get in my own head about stuff like that, because it's not about my standards, it's about what I want to share with you. And I never had that before. I honestly used to be called One Take Turner, because what I do is I turn up to do a product and I'd go, right, it's going to be one take. And then I'd stand there, and let's say, for example, it were a drawing duplication, and I'd say, right, we're going to count in 3, 2. This drawing duplication is the best drawing duplication in the world. If you want to have somebody think of a drawing and duplicate it, this is the exact one for you. Gone are the days where you have to guess what somebody's thinking about. You'll just know this is small, but it plays massive. There's no pocket space. It's everyday carry. And if you want to psychologically know what somebody's thinking, this is the tool for you. And it'd be like that. And it'd be like, if I fumbled my words a little bit, or I sounded too posh or eloquent, then, or I were playing a character too hard, I didn't care. Now I'll go back and I'll say, can I watch that back, and can I listen to what it is that I'm saying? Do I really believe what I'm saying there? Do I really instinctively feel that what I'm saying there is true? Does it really resonate with me? Am I lying or shilling? If so, I don't want to do that. If I don't feel that I like a product, like, you know, when I worked with Illusionist, there were certain products that they made me stand there and say things about, and I get it. They owned me contractually. I'd say things that were shilling things that I didn't like, and I became something that wasn't me. And I'd say, you know, I've never been a fan of apt-based mentalism. Take-out mentalism is just not for me, but this is different. You know, so just start to learn to be you, and don't ever say or do anything that's, you know, that goes against that. And all of a sudden you'll find your groove, and you'll hit a patch where you're like me now, you know what I mean? So we do all get imposter syndrome. We all get in our own heads, and that's all right. But nobody wants to admit that. And the honesty is, in this community, we're just the blind leading the blind. That's it. That's a fact. But nobody has the cojones to come out and say, sometimes I don't know what I'm doing. There's times when I'm trusted with millions of pounds to budget on a set, and there's a team there, and we start out at the start of those days, we've no clue what it is that we're going to do, and we have to quickly find our feet and find a direction and a path and stick with it. And that's it. So we're all imposters. We're all the blind leading the blind. The difference is that some of us have just had a little bit more experience walking around doing things, and we find our feet a bit quicker, and that's it. But don't ever feel like, you know, bad for being or feeling like an imposter. Eric, greetings from Germany. I really love your work. Do you have any ideas of busking as a mentalist? Nicholas Arnst has the greatest ethos when it comes to that sort of stuff. And I'm going to do a video on it, Eric, because I really love his approach. His approach is, you know, that people become a part of his world as opposed to him being a part of theirs. And that really fits in line with busking. So I will do a full video on that. I promise you that. But yeah, there is a way to do it. JJ, maybe you know it. Once Dan Madison said in one video that he performed for every single restaurant in the Greek Street in Leeds until they caught him. Could that be true? I don't know, because I don't know where Greek Street is. I don't have any sort of idea of how big it is. But the thing with Dan, and I'll tell you, Dan is one thing that Dan's very, very good at is Dan is better, in fact, better than anybody I've ever met at committing to a character. And Dan commits to a character like nobody I've ever met. And if he thinks that it's going to drive the narrative of his character forwards, I'm sure Dan would say it. Like Dan will tell you that he's hung upside down by his toe and being dipped into shark-infested waters if it makes his character seem cooler, you know. And that's That's not a detriment to Dan. That's a huge positive and a huge plus. When you meet Dan in person, you talk to him in real life and you spend some time behind the scenes. He's one of the most lovely guys that you'll ever meet. And I'm not saying that it's a lie. I'm not saying that Dan lies. What I'm saying is that Dan knows how to lean into a character better than anybody else I've ever met in my life. And he's a lot better at that than he is as a performer and as a card man. And he's great at both of those things. So, you know, that's a compliment. So the honesty is I don't know. It could be just to spread the legend, the character, or it could be true. I mean, I don't think it's very difficult to perform down one street anywhere. I don't know what you mean by court, though. Dan said that he performed for every single restaurant in the Greek street in Leeds until they caught him. I don't know what that means, but I don't know. How to create customized mentalism while learning plan. We did that. Nice to see you, Paul. Hey, Pete. Reed, I got your message. I've not yet changed my number. I've just been extremely busy. But I'm going to get back to you. Can we do this? I've got Sam in town now, so it'd be great for you to reach out to me to be able to do something together during this period. That'd be great. So we've got about 5 more minutes, so I'm going to answer these a lot quicker. Erwin, hi Pete, does incorporating a force pad to force categories make branching anagrams seem less restrictive and enhance the effect? Yes. And if you're using a forcing pad, another thing that I'll say is, and this was something that I created a long time ago, never saw anybody else doing, but put in that, and I'm answering a lot quicker now, put in there categories like think of anything you like. And then you say to them, these are bonus pages. If you land on one of these pages, you can literally think of anything you like. That means that when you force the category that's got the anagram, what you can do is you can quickly, if you've got a few pages at the back, and nobody else does this, but it's a really beautiful tip with a forcing pad. At the back of the pad, add the back, maybe less than a quarter, an eighth of pages that say think of anything you like. So you keep a break where there are pages, and what you do is you, as you're turning, you say, okay, so you pick something. Can you just look at that, look at it on your own, think about whatever that category is. If it says think of anything you like, make a category up, and then you close the book and you break it open at one of the pages that say think of anything you like, and you say just for everybody else. And now in the big motion of turning, open the pad to show everybody else this is the category, close it. I don't know what category you're thinking of. Now everybody believes that this person's just randomly made a category up, and then when you start to branching anagram it, it doesn't even feel like it's part of the book. They just think this person's made it up and you picked up on it. And even if you name the category at that point, let's say it's star signs, you say, okay, first I'm going to try to whittle down the category. I'm getting there's an R in there, right? And an A as well, yes. There's not an I in there, no. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of that category and this. You're thinking of star signs, right? Yes, now you get a hit. And then if they start to react, use the Dunninger modesty ploy, you turn and go, no. Now this person just thinks that they think that you're being modest, and this person thinks that you're saying, no, don't react to that. You know, it's just part of the course. So you can use a really beautiful little ploy there to make it seem like the book didn't even matter. You've dismissed the prop. And that's a really big thing in mentalism. Again, I'll do a video on that down the line. Magic Thespian, you've done incredible gigs with incredible work. You don't flaunt fancy corporate logos. You don't have flashy reels. You are so authentic yourself. What's something you think most performers don't think about? Well, it's great. So Matt, it's really lovely to see you. The Magic Thespian. There's a reason that I don't post that stuff, and this is what I always find interesting. Sometimes I posted the BAFTA thing because it were good promotion for the group of people I were with, and I never wore a tux. So if you look at that post, if you go back, that post were actually more about me wearing a tux than it was the BAFTAs. But the underlying thing that I was sharing there is that I were going to the BAFTAs. So I suppose it's a moot point. But just look at these performers that are posting things, and when you see them posting about a gig once every month, you know that they're only doing a gig once every month, right? And it's like, and I'm not saying not to be proud of what it is that you're doing, but what most people don't think about is that what they're advertising is just how little they're actually doing. Or it might be just how much they're doing. If you look at Liam Manor, he's like killing it. He does loads. You know, his thing is to post that he's in seat 1A of any aircraft that he gets on. And that's a great thing. You know, that's his life, and that promotion works well for him. For me, I just don't think it matters. Like you'll hear me talk about my consulting. I don't really talk about who it is I'm working with. I don't really talk about what I'm working on. I don't talk about what shows I have worked on. I might drop the title of them in one video or talk about an act at some point somewhere. Excuse me. But I don't really talk about that because it's not important, because what I'm doing there, and this is the important lesson to remember for everybody watching this, every one of those gigs, every one of those consultations, every time I've offered advice, that's me aiding in making somebody else's dream come true. Think about that, right? So I'm most proud of the things that I've done for me. Not because I'm selfish, but because I grow when I'm doing something for me. And I don't even post about that. I don't post about it because there'll be a day that comes, and I know it, where that stuff, I'll find its way out naturally. God, those incense sticks are horrible. I'm not going to tell you what brand it is, but they're not good. But there's going to be a day where that stuff comes out naturally. And that'll be the day when I'll sit back and people realize, okay, this guy's actually done quite a bit. And that's the fun, is that, you know, I don't need to go into a conversation and tell people, you know, I nearly lost my life getting put through a glass table. And again, I'm only digging pig cake, I'm joking. But it's, yeah, it's not for me. So what do I think performers know? I think they're losing the art of mystique. They're losing the art of word of mouth. They're losing the art of rumors and legends. And in this age that we call the internet, I think everybody's losing the Burglass effect. And everybody thinks the Burglass effect is a card trick where a card appears at a number. It's not. The Burglass effect is that rumor that trickles through magic forums, and that rumor that's passed down from magician to magician over to mentalists about this guy that could do these incredible things. And, you know, you walk into his house and he's got a cabinet with this deck of cards in there. And that's what the Burglass effect is, the ability to have people spread via word of mouth, a legend prior to the internet, and it spread like wildfire around the world. And that, I think, is what's missing from performers now, is learning the ability to do that ability to stand out, and just that ability to have something that's so special that people talk about it and there's little jitters about it. So people mistakenly think the Burglass effect is a trick. It's not. So Erwin, in addition, I need some help refining Midas touch. Is my number one effect, and I want to express my gratitude for coming out for it. You can email me the question. Yeah, 100%. Been called for tea. Catch you soon, Paul. Gabriel, Pete, will you feel comfortable to do a week vlog on your second channel about your daily life routine? I am going to do. So I've just literally, I don't know where it is, but I've literally, my mobile phone is being upgraded. I've got a cable that connects a microphone to my phone, and I'm finding ways to strip back. You know, I'm trying to find ways to strip back how I'm filming and stuff, because that'll be more raw and real, less voiceover, less cutaways, and just real life. What's my biggest dream right now, mentalism related or not? And that's a great question. Do you know, the honesty is I've sort of lost sight of my life a little bit. And I think right now what I'd really like is to have a social life. That'd be lovely. Like, again, I know I'm saying a lot, leaning on Sam a lot, but Sam will know this. Like, I picked Sam up yesterday, and literally in my entire day yesterday, I had about 20 minutes off where I went and picked Sam up and brought him back. And then when I got into bed last night, I was writing until 4 o'clock in the morning. I then sent that over. I was back up at 7 o'clock. I was writing again this morning. I don't have a social life. And it'd be really nice to maybe find somebody that I could settle down with, and maybe find time to do nice social things, you know, and actually actively feel like I'll see my friends once every so often. We'll go out for a drink and we'll talk about life, or I'll go to the unit once every so often when my friends have got a car. But I wish I had more of a social life. So I think my biggest dream is just to learn a better balance between my mentalism and work and consulting and my actual life. How would you go about doing mentalism or magic, or adding magic or mentalism if you were doing a murder mystery for your friends from a church? It's a good question. It depends. Do you want to be the person that finds out who the murderer is, or do you want to use mentalism and magic to be able to obfuscate who it is that did the murder, and use magic and mentalism to put a twist in there to throw people off the scent, which are two opposing things depending on which side of the coin you're looking at. But if you drop me an email and tell me your exact way to do it, what you want to achieve, whether you want to be the person that finds out who the killer is, or you want to be the person, and using mentalism to do that, or you want to be the person that obfuscates the process to hide that and put a twist in there that nobody expects, I'll be able to help you with that. JJ, thanks so much for all the advice. You're planning a kind regularly stream. I am going to be. I don't know what the schedule is, but I promise it's going to be more than it is now. So KX, IP, I would like to ask, have you ever made a living from just doing shows? I did for 10 years. 10 years I did. But do you know what? They were the worst shows in the world. It were horrible. It were absolutely horrible. I were doing shows in working men's clubs where people didn't want to see me, in between drinks and bassline music and dance music. And I had to get up, and I did things like staple gun roulette, and I did things like banknote revelations, and people didn't know their date of birth, and it were a constant battle backwards and forwards. I did. and I would never do it again. It stripped away the love that I had for performing. I actually preferred performing socially more than I ever did working men's clubs. I used to work, there's a guy called Kenny that I used to work with, and he had a brewery and a series of pubs and bars, and I always went into their new pubs, and word of mouth spread. I covered for a hypnotist for a long enough time, and yeah, just wasn't me. I hated it. And that were only because they were the consistent gigs that I were getting. The gigs that I do now, I love. But the honest answer is that I'd never be able to make a living doing consistent gigs now, because the amount of money that I'd need to make for the outgoings that I've got just wouldn't add up. It wouldn't match. So I have to take on consulting. I have to take on the occasional live show. I also take on directing, you know, like I've done a lot of directing in areas that are not mentalism, as I mentioned at the beginning of this live stream. So the answer to your question is, yeah, I did make a living, and I cut my teeth in the worst venues possible. And it always made me laugh whenever I'd read, oh yeah, but does he perform in the real world? I'll tell you what, I challenge anybody to come to a working men's club with me and come and perform where I performed, because those people are real world people. When I say that they don't want to read a book, they won't pick up a book, they won't write anything down, they won't punch something into a phone, they won't let you touch their phone. Some of them don't even know their own date of births. They're all drunk, they want to fight. If you aren't getting what they're doing, you're lucky you don't get a left hook to the side of the face. If you're not funny, if you're not quick, if you're not hitting the right banter without being disrespectful, they've eaten you for breakfast. So the answer is yeah. Spencer, I've been practicing PK touching, including Midas. I'm still nervous on doing it for people. Is there any advice you have to get past that mental barrier? When I say this, it's going to be the cliche answer. Just go and do it. Honestly, just go and do it. And I promise you that once you've done it a couple of times, just a couple of times, get caught. Get caught. Do it for somebody who's never going to meet you again. Give them a fake name, run it. And if you get caught, you'll learn what it is that got you caught. And then you'll go, you know what? It wasn't that bad. Nobody died. And that's it. It's nice and easy. Bruce Lee's mindset. Incredibly valuable and informative response to my question earlier. Thank you, and hope to talk more about my effect through Thought Bullet when you get your new mail set up. Send it across to peterturnermind@hotmail.co.uk. I'd love to use it. How did you do the very first video uploaded on YouTube where you apparently drove the car without looking directly into the camera? Was it green screen? No, I wasn't driving. I wasn't driving it. I just put my hands out like this. Just pretended to drive and talk, and it was somebody else driving, and then the camera pans to that person later on. So that were my Penguin Live. That my Penguin, and everybody else had stood there and said, well, you know, welcome to my Penguin Live. If you tune into my Penguin Live, I'm going to teach you X, Y, and Z. Mine wasn't that. Mine were, I'm excited to give my first Penguin Live down for the gear change. And I'd have added noise effects in and stuff now, but I didn't do it. But you know, I'm excited for that. We're going to talk about suggestion. We're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about implication. You know, and then all of a sudden at the end, and it goes, oh yeah, and you must think I'm crazy to not look at the road whilst driving this. I'm not driving, but implication is a wonderful tool. It was something like that, and then it pans down at the steering wheel, and that was just always, you know, always the thing that my brain told me at the time to make it fun and interesting. I just tried to be different, and it wasn't a purposeful thing. I just went, this is how I want to do it, and so that's that. I don't often get caught up in the pursuit of perfection in magic, and I've realized it's holding back my productivity. How can someone move past perfection when it becomes a barrier becomes more a barrier than a goal? Robert, it's a great question, because I struggle with that as well. And it holds back my productivity. You asked Pigcake, and again, I know I keep shooting these people out, but we filmed something in August last year, and it didn't make it into something until maybe March this year. And the reason that that's the case is because when I cut it the first time, it just didn't look right. Sat and cut it again, it didn't look right. And then I sat back and went, you know what? Maybe it's not the content of what I'm cutting that's wrong, but the things that are surrounding it. And then I changed those, and it fit into place a lot better. Everything that's got a story, whatever the problem is, this is a good way to look at it. Whatever's a problem, make it a feature. And that's something I learned in carpentry. But whenever something's a problem, make it a benefit or a plus. Like, for example, if you're going to have somebody pick a card and not think of one, what you'll do is you'll say, you know, if I ask you to think of a card, I might have overheard you talking about your favorite number. I might be able to guess knowing you what your favorite card is. Whereas if you pick one, none of us knows what you're going to pick. So there's no way I could know where it is, making it more impossible than you thinking of a card. If somebody's going to think of a card instead of pick one, what you're going to do there is go, you know, if I had you pick a card, I might be accused of using sleight of hand. Whereas if you just think of it and you're not touching the cards, it only exists inside your head, and therefore that's the fairest way to do this. Well, both of those things are fair because we made a feature of it. So what I tend to do is if I find there's any flaws in anything that I'm doing, whether it's putting something out or whether there's a mistake in something, and there's loads of mistakes, but hopefully that people don't see them. That episode I put on YouTube, I could watch it back and I go, oh, I hate that I said that. I hate that I did this. And it's finding ways to portray that, you know, finding ways to make a feature of it. And what I found that I'm all right at is that I'm all right at finding a story that might, like the Burglass thing, you know, like with the Hollywood stars that were going to go out. I always knew the direction of that. I always knew I wanted it to be an any card, any number leading to that, but it had no personal element attached to it. And I just went, you know what? I'm going to attach the David Burglass thing to this. I'm going to tell the story of David Burglass, which is a true story. That's going to be the narrative that leads into me performing any card at any number. Then I'm going to shit on my own version of any card at any number, which the honesty is, watch it back. It were a great version of any card at any number, but it just didn't feel like my own because I didn't create it. And then it led to that footage that I could never cut together properly. And all of a sudden it made sense now. So sometimes when it doesn't feel like it's right, it's just that the things that surround it are wrong. It might not be the thing itself. So, you know, just look at changing what's around the thing that you feel is imperfect. Or if it's imperfect, point out it's imperfect and make it a benefit. And then I found that I can live with myself a lot better that way, because then the imperfections go unnoticed because they've been mentioned. And it's called painting it red. But did you follow the videos about, here we go, wait a minute. Did you follow the videos about the atomic deck? Do you perform it yourself, or do you prefer the Burglass effect off 51 Faces North? I never really followed them. I know that there were a lot of backwards and forwards between Unbiased Magic and Craig Petty and people like that. But do you know what? Honestly, and when I say this, like, Unbiased Magic has said some things about me in the past. I don't care. I really don't care. Craig Petty, you know, Craig and I went backwards and forwards with some things in the past. I don't care. I'm not into dramas and what everybody else is doing. Like, the atomic deck's great. Like, it serves a purpose. Does it work? Yes. Is it what it says it is? Yes. Did Craig give people enough information? Yes. Is it the best version of any card at any number? No. Did it fool me? You know, like, I knew that there had to be there were a compromise, and let me say this, there were a compromise, and I knew what that compromise was. The way it worked were incredible. I'd have committed it to memory. I wouldn't have done it with an app. I told Craig, I was the person that said to Craig, tried to find a way to commit this to memory. But it's a great effect. Like, that's not me taking anything away from Craig, you know, but the backwards and forwards on stuff like that, it just doesn't matter to me. And the honesty is that I have no, over that, I'd rather, if I'm going to do any card at any number, which I don't really perform for lay people, I'll just jazz it. I'll just mess around and jazz it. I have so many systems now that, you know, I have stuff that I do mentally that is better for me. How do you learn to set boundaries and to say no in business, in private situations? For example, to have more, I don't. JJ, I wish I knew the answer to that. Sometimes I spend so much time helping other people that the honesty is that I don't have the best advice to give you on that. I need to learn that myself. What effect think about any card you recommend? What is your favourite Max Maven trick? There's a lock and key effect, like the Astrological Key by Max Maven, that I really love. I think that's a really beautiful effect. His Prism series, when he went under the name Phil Goldstein, were a brilliant series. There's a couple of effects in there. And I really love Black Moon, or Kurasuke as it's known. And I have a nice version of that. So they're the ones that I'd recommend. As for card effects, the best mentalism card effect of all time, in my opinion, is Trilogy. Trilogy is a wonderful effect, and I promise you I'm going to work on that in the future. Any plans to come to Thailand? I'm going to come over to Thailand. Weirdly, I was talking to a few friends about just going to Thailand just for a holiday. So I'm trying to actively be a better person, and have a better social life. So, M. Scott McFarlane, you're a wonderful writer. Have you considered writing a novel or some kind of short stories? I write children's books. And I normally keep the stories to myself, but I released one in the end of Attic Salt. In fact, I released 2 in Attic Salt. One's The Oracle, and one of them's about fate, and that's about Stanley Happenstance. So I really love children's books like Roald Dahl and Enid Blyton and things like that, and they'd be the go-to books that I'd write. And I honestly promise you this, that if I could give up mentalism to be, and it's not even monetary, but to be a published children's author and do that, I'd do that, because I'd really love to go down that road. That's a big passion of mine. What do you think about predictions that come a long time after the performance, and the spectre nose, tattoos, phone cases, you know, things on fingernails? So the spec nose, you mean, so predictions that are ingrained predictions, I think that they can be good. I think what you've got to be is very careful not to step on the toes of the mind reading that you do. You see, the problem with a lot of predictions, they're illogical, because what happens is when you start to predict information, it suggests you could see into the future. If you could see into the future, then all the things that you just read from everybody else becomes by default stepped upon, especially if they're ingrained. So a better way to deal with those most of the time is to use them as a piece of influence as opposed to a prediction. And because that way they become real time. And I think influence is more of a stronger topic than prediction. And if it is prediction, why are you not predicting the lottery? Why are you not predicting world events? Why are you predicting small things? You see what I mean? So influence is often a stronger tool than prediction because it's not stepping on everything else. But again, that's just an opinion. Maybe a newbie or rookie question. How is it possible to film a video just like you did one for the trailer where it looked like a one shot without any cuts inspired by that one music video? So that were my Bigger Fish Files video. It were inspired by Eagle Eye Cherry's Save Tonight. When I started making that video, I had no clue what I was doing. Like, I'd never done a one shot before. I'd never done a stitch shot. I'd never done a wipe. I'd never done a mask. And so what I do is I just obsess over how it's going to look until it's right, and then film it until it's right. And when I say this, quality is important, but in film, quantity is important. So it's try to strive for the utmost quality, but take as many takes as you can, so you have as many options as you can. And they call it the buffet. And this is something that a lot of cinematographers don't really understand when they're making videos, is that the more that, and good cinematographers do, is that they'll shoot even the most insequential things from perspectives and angles that you wouldn't think about. So when they get into the edit, they're not bound by what they've got. And even bad footage can be good. Like, and that sounds ridiculous, but bad footage, don't get rid of it. Keep some of it. Keep your maybes and get rid of your absolutely horrible footage, because your maybes can be used in documentaries and things where you're talking about the behind the scenes. So, you know, imagine that you've got a really great bit of footage and everybody's looked at it and gone, wow, that were amazing. How did you make that? Which is what you just said. What I'll do there is I'll go, well, you know, it took a lot of time to film. These are the kinds of shots we got before. And then I'll throw out 2 or 3 of them. And all of a sudden now the waste, the cutting room floor stuff gets used behind the scenes to show you that it's not a straightforward process. But quantity, there's the thing. Hey up, Lewis. So we hung out in Florida. What a guy. Like, what a guy. Thank you for everything whilst we were over there. Erwin Massey, could I integrate the tri-principle pre-show conditioning to fail-safe the hand stick? I understand it might be over, and it's not overkill. That's a great way to use it. That's the best way to use it, and I do that quite a bit. So that's a little secret to behind the scenes. James, call in for a cup of tea or coffee in your case. I haven't seen you for a bit. Let's have a look. Thank you, Scott McFarlane. These are going to be the last 2, and then I'm going to go. When is your next project dropping? Relatively soon. I just need to get it finished. So it might drop within a month or 2, and then it's going to be a while before it's actually released, but I'll explain more about that coming forward. So JJ, what favourite book you read recently, fiction as well as non-fiction? I always go back to the classics. So Enid Blyton, I'm going to reread The Secret Island by Enid Blyton because it's the best. Like, Enid Blyton's Secret Island is everything that I wish could have happened to me as a kid. So if you don't know Enid Blyton's Secret Island, get it, read it, love it. It's the best. Don Wand. Pete, remind me to show you my A-can at Magic Live. I want your opinion if you've ever done the way I'm doing my A-can. Don, I'd love to. Let's just grab a beer. Like, the thing with Don and I just spent ages talking about nothing, and he has an incredible, I'm not going to say what it is, but he has an incredible effect. He can produce anything, any playing card that's called for instant. I don't want to say what it is in case I'm stepping on it, but it's up there with the best I've seen, probably the best, certainly the fastest. But let's get a beer at Magic Live. Present, what's changed the most about your goals or dreams in the past few years? My goals or dreams now is that I realize that nothing is impossible. Nothing is impossible for me to achieve. And that's not me being big-headed. It's just knowing that I can work all the hours that I've got available, knowing how to hyper-focus on a goal. It's knowing how to obsess over something to achieve it. So now what's changed is that I do everything to the best of my ability, and I'm not scared to admit when I failed. I'm not scared to admit when I'm wrong. I'm not scared to be better. So that's that. And these will be the last one. Thank you, JJ. Did you feel like you've experienced real love, and what did it teach you? That's a very great question, and the answer to which I don't really know. I don't know what I was taught. I don't really know what I was taught. Like, I just know that it's the worst kind of I suppose, social situation, to find yourself in a situation where you're wholeheartedly committed to somebody and you feel that that person's wholeheartedly committed to you, but for whatever reason, maybe your dreams and goals and their dreams and goals don't line up, or they want something different to what you want. And what I learned is that sometimes, no matter how much you care and love about somebody, and no matter how much you want to spend a life with somebody, and no matter how much you do, or how much you go out of your way for somebody, sometimes you've just got to accept that maybe their life is different to yours, and maybe they want different things to you. And what happens is that you're holding them back if they do things your way, and they're holding you back if you do things their way. And at that point, what you've got to do is you've just got to look each other in the eyes, and you've got to be very real about it, and you've got to say goodbye and walk away. And the pain in that situation is often as hard as losing the people that you love the most when they pass away. So it's almost like somebody's died, and that's, the one thing that I've learned is that a lot of the time these situations, you start as strangers and you leave as strangers with memories. And that's what I learned in those situations, is that sometimes you've just got to walk away, and it's so hard not to give the look back. And that's the hard bit, is not to glance over your shoulder or give one last cursory glance. It's hard to not reopen that door, but you just got to keep moving forwards. And so at some point in your life, you'll find somebody that makes you feel that exact same way, but their goals in life and what they're trying to achieve lines up very much with yours. And that's what I've learned. And I haven't found that there's anybody that's willing to want to fall into the way that I do things. And that's just life, you know what I mean? I'm nearly 40 years old. Maybe it'll happen at some point. I'm going to end up being a cat man, even though I don't really like cats. But yeah. Right, I think that's it about it, guys. I think that's a good place to leave it. For everybody that's tuned in, I love you for tuning in, and thank you for everything. But yeah, I just, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you for tuning in. I want to thank you for the time that you've given me. I want to thank you for coming from all around the world and asking me questions. And I'm going to be back more and more and more and more. If you see me and you ever catch me in person in an airport, a convention or anything, let's catch up. If you just want to email me, if you have anything you want to talk about in life, even outside of mentalism, I'm more than open to do that as well. But yeah, from the bottom of my heart, I think we'll end it there. And that's Ask Me Anything 3. So take care.